One thing I had observed as a retail golfer was almost all the best courses in America, unlike Scotland and Ireland, are private. So avid golfers, of which there are millions, would love to play Pine Valley or Augusta or Shinnecock or any number of private courses. So I thought that was a negative for golf in America and an opportunity for someone to come in with a quality golf course that's open to the public. That's been my ethos since day one. Golf should be affordable. Golf should be something that anyone can play, and that's what we found here at Bandon Dunes. My name is Mike Kaiser, and I started Bandon Dunes 25 years ago. The actual success of Bandon Dunes was astonishing to everyone, including me. No one thought that people would come to Bandon. We took bets on whether we'd do 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 rounds per year, which was roughly break even. And everyone was just astonished that avid golfers would journey all the way to Bandon, Oregon, which is 4 hours from Portland, 11 hours from San Francisco. Who would make that drive or flight? Many people did. I mean, we are now doing 260,000 rounds per year with a lot of people contributing to that.
Mike Kaiser is an acclaimed golf course developer. He's the founder of Bandon Dunes Golf Resort. He's inspired, financed, and built other courses around the world. In 1985, he gets inspired when he plays a bunch of legendary Irish links courses. And that same year, he gets his first opportunity as a developer. He buys a 60-acre sand site in New Buffalo, Michigan, to prevent it from becoming a strip of condos near his family's lake house. He turns that into what's called the Dunes Club, and the Dunes Club is a private 9-hole course. It's very successful, he has a great time doing it, so he decides, I want to do another project. It whets his appetite for something bigger. And basically at the time, he also felt that America's best courses were either too expensive for the average person or gate-kept by private clubs, so he felt like he could do something where he could create affordable golf for just about anybody. So links golf comes from the Old English word hlink, which means rising ground or ridge, and refers to sandy area along the coast. You'll find many of the traditional links courses in Ireland, Scotland, and England, and there's a very specific definition as to what can be a links course. This essentially created a style of golf where you're on these sand sites, you're by the water, by the ocean. They're very wide fairways, oversized greens, there's a lack of trees, and it's kind of very a minimalist and natural type thing.
Initially, I looked on the East Coast for a site and despaired when after 2 years, the only things I had seen were on the intercoastal waterway. They were on water, but not the ocean. I couldn't find a site even beginning for sale for even 100 acres, much less the 500 acres I sought. And I expressed my disappointment to my good friend Howard McKee, who worked at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. And he said, you should look in Oregon. And I knew nothing about Oregon, but I hadn't been finding anything on the East Coast. Put the word out, and lo and behold, within a year, a broker called and said, I've got this site right on the ocean. A little over a mile of ocean frontage, big sand dunes. I don't know anything about golf, but I just wanted to call you and tell you about it. I rushed out there, and it was so good that I then rushed up to Seattle and talked with the 3 old guys who had owned the site for years. And they said, you seem like a nice young man, and we haven't been able to sell this property for 4 years. Sure, we'll reduce the price by half, and we'll wish you well. It was truly serendipitous. So I had the money, then I needed an architect. So the hardest thing to get started was choosing an architect that knew something about links golf. And I went to Glen Eagles and talked with Jimmy Kidd and his son David, and they said, oh sure, we know how to build links golf courses, let us at it. And they came right to Bandon Dunes and did a fabulous routing, and then the question was, who will ever come to Bandon, Oregon to play it? And we didn't know the answer to that until the first year when we did not the 10,000 rounds I thought was unrealistic, but sort of my prayer. The first year we did not 10,000 rounds, but 25,000 rounds.
Last year, Bandon Dunes recorded an astonishing 257,000 rounds played, bolstered by a top-tier hospitality experience and an 8-figure merchandise business. Forbes estimates the resort had just shy of $125 million in revenue last year and turned a profit north of $31 million, valuing the resort at $350 million. Demand isn't slowing either. Bandon Dunes has an 18-month waiting list, and it's easy to see why. 4 of its full-length courses rank among Golf Digest's list of America's 100 best, and its $350 greens fee is roughly half of the $675 that Pebble Beach charges. When you ask Mike Keiser about his ethos, about what he's trying to accomplish with his courses, he's always first to kind of state that he wants it to be in tune with nature, to complement nature, and that's been a core part of his mission, especially with Bandon Dunes. Additionally, he owns a bunch of land that he keeps solely for conservation, and when he builds, he kind of builds in an environmentally conscious way. Obviously, golf course development can be polarizing. Developers see things one way, environmental groups and other organizations see them another. It's hard to generalize without knowing the specific situation, but if you talk to Mike Keiser, the one thing he will always say is he's committed to building courses that are synced with nature.
My dad was an Eagle Scout, and he drilled into us whenever we went on a hike, a mountain climb. A good camper leaves the campsite better than when he got there. So that was sort of early environmentalism. If you're going to make a mess, make sure you clean it up. It's a lot easier when building a golf course if you don't have real estate as part of your plan, because then you just need beautiful dunes, use them for the entire coastline, as opposed to reserving some of the best land for residences. It's a better way to stay pure.
Being an acclaimed golf developer wasn't exactly what Mike Keiser thought he would be doing with his life. After college and after a stint in the Navy, he got out and he was planning to enter Harvard Business School. In 1971, he's set to go into HBS, and while on a ski bum vacation, he decides he doesn't want to go. So the way he tells the story is that his subconscious was working overtime because he literally had a dream that he had to start a greeting card company making cards on 100% recycled paper. He got together with his best friend and college roommate, Phil Friedman. They formed Recycled Paper Greetings, and it actually grew into a very substantial business. In 2005, they sold it for $250 million to a private equity firm.
My father was aghast. He was a Wharton graduate and thought nothing made less sense to him than not going to business school and starting a greeting card company, about which I knew nothing. The whole idea was greeting cards on 100% recycled paper, so we thought in the days of beginning ecology, they would just sell themselves. Definitely wrong. Everyone thought it was a nice idea, but they bought cards based on the content, not on the paper. We call our dads and say, "Dad, will you give us $5,000 to start this greeting card company about which we know nothing?" And my father and Phil Friedman's father both gulped and said, "Okay, just this once." No one thought it was a good idea. The early days at RPG were going to the Yellow Pages in Chicago, because we had chosen Chicago as the place to live. Looking under artist, bold type, we figured if they could afford a bold type inclusion in the telephone book, they were better than the ones without a bold type. And we would just dial them up and go see them, and we would basically ask them for their old Christmas cards. And a surprising number of them thought it was sort of cute, and they said, if you like them, sure, here, take my last 10 years. So at that early going, we actually had an easy time finding pretty good content from Chicago artists.
So in 1975, Keiser and Friedman meet Sandra Boynton, who's a Yale graduate with a penchant for humorous illustrations and clever messages. The way Keiser describes this time in history is that greeting cards back then were all hearts and flowers. And Sandra's approach offered something different: humor, cleverness. So they sign her, and instead of the typical $50 per design fee back then, she asks for a royalty, which they grant. It's probably one of the best decisions they ever made, because by the mid-1980s, the company grossed to over $100 million in revenue. And Keiser will attribute most of that to Sandra Boynton's work. Now, if you ask him, he'll say she was the woman who made him enough money to build Bandon Dunes. He'll call her a genius over and over again, and ultimately, it's true, because the success of recycled paper greetings is what allowed Keiser to pursue the second career.
Sandra Boynton is a genius. We met her at the New York Stationery Show in the 1960s, and we didn't know she was a genius. We knew that she was gifted, but not a genius. Basically, whatever she designed for us sold well, and in many cases sold superlatively. Her most famous card was a picture of a hippo, a bird, and 2 sheep with the message, "Hippo, birdie, to you," and it ran out of stores. We actually had a system where we knew what our best cards and our worst cards were, and that was essential for our success, because we could basically make sure that only good cards were in any given store. We grew from 2 million when we first met her to 100 million. I would attribute almost all that growth to Sandra Boynton. Then a genius, still a genius. She's still working, doing children's books and children's songs. Whatever field she's in is top of the charts. She's brilliant. A lot of golf aficionados around the world were stunned how well Bandon Dunes did, and quickly understood the formula. Sand dunes on ocean with great architect equals successful golf. So once Bandon Dunes had established itself as an ongoing success, many people came out of the woodwork, I would say, to find sites that they could develop into links golf courses around the world. There are many opportunities close to Bandon Dunes. Specifically, there are sites for 3 golf courses that I'm looking at just south of Bandon. And then further than that, if I live long enough, are the beautiful dunes, 50 miles of dunes going north. So to the south, there are at least 3 sites that I'm attracted to. Going north, there are as many as 4, 5, 6 sites. For the good of golf, golf should not be for the rich. And to fault Pebble Beach on one thing, I mean, they are approaching $1,000 for one round of golf, which is out of sight for many people. We try to be far less than half of what Pebble Beach is, which right now is $110 to $350, which is an affordable amount, depending on the time of year. And I think that that's important for golf.
Let it be known, Pro Basketball Hall of Famer, NBA champion, CEO of Isiah International is here at the NASDAQ. That's it. On the other side, talking business with Isiah Thomas. Hello, everyone. This is Jabbar Young, senior writer at Forbes, and I'm at the NASDAQ market site. And I just told you who we're ready to talk to. Let it be known, Isiah Thomas is here. Man, Pro Basketball Hall of Famer, 2-time NBA champion, 12-time NBA All-Star, Detroit Pistons legend, CEO of Isiah International, Forbes BOK advisor, right? Am I missing anything? Am I missing anything?
Yeah. No, that's good enough.
Millionaire.
No.
Cool.
Humanitarian.
Humanitarian.
Giving to the people.
Humanitarian. Absolutely, man.
Yes.
Zeke, it is a pleasure to have you at the NASDAQ, man. I mean, we've always talked. We always have the conversations. It was a year ago. We was in Atlanta at the first annual BLK Summit, and I love that moment. Get to that in a minute. But how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming, man. Listen, we're here at the stock market. You got to give me a stock. What has worked well for Isiah Thomas all these years that maybe you still have in your portfolio, or once you let it go, it serves you well?
I would say for me, communications and technology stocks have been, they've worked well for me.
Yeah.
And, whether it be Apple, AT&T, the things you need, know, the bread and butter.
Absolutely.
That, and the food that comes to the table, that's what I invest in.
Yeah.
The things that you use every single day, those are the things that I invest in.
Yeah. Procter & Gamble, I tell people, like, that's a great stock. I mean, it's in your house. Everywhere you look, Procter & Gamble is in your house.
That's what my econ teacher told me. My econ teacher told me in high school, go into your pantry and look and see what products that you're using at home, and that's what you invest in.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, well, we ain't got no food in my pantry, So I went over to my friend's house, and I saw, and we were doing like a little high school experiment. And, you just, really, the things that you use every single day, those are the things you should invest in.
Absolutely, man. I'm a big Southwest flyer, and I just bought some Southwest stock. I had to, as I use it. As a CEO, what is the first order of business that you do after a U.S. presidential election, right? I mean, because you're an international CEO, companies all over the world. Like, what do you do after you know who the candidate is? You know it's going to be a whole new administration. What's the first action of business?
What are the rules of the game? What rules are we going to be playing by with this administration as opposed to the last administration?
Yeah.
And particularly being a minority owner, right? And with DEI being discussed so much, if that goes away, then how are companies going to operate? What is going to be their public discourse? Will they continue to hire and practice things that they've done in the past? or will they move to a totally different space and sector?
Yeah.
So those are the things that I look at, like what are the rules of the game, how we playing, and who are the officials?
That's the big rule, right? Who
Yeah.
are the officials? We're going to
Yeah.
get another Steve Jabby. Who are the officials?
Yeah. And you got to understand the rules. If
Yeah.
you don't understand the rules, then you can't play.
Yeah.
And so once this administration lays out its rules, January 20th, right, then you start understanding how you as a company have to operate and what are the opportunities, what are the things that you can do, and what are the things you can't do.
Yeah. I'll get into more, the new administration. If they called you for advice, think about that. What would you tell them? But we'll get into that in a minute, man. Listen, 1 year ago, man, in November, you came to Atlanta. You was at the Forbes BOK Summit, man. Thank you again for that opportunity. You turned so many heads down there and opened so many eyes to your champagne, right? It's a great moment. What do you remember about that, man? That was the inaugural Forbes BOK Summit, man, and you were the first.
I remember the conversations before we got on stage.
Yeah.
That we were having in the back room, that everyone had a chance to really kind of get to know each other, communicate, share ideas, and just really embrace each other and give each other love, support. It was a beautiful moment because I remember during that period of time when you were launching, you were a little nervous, but you had so much support and love around you that you couldn't fail. And that's what makes a team works. That's what makes business work. When people come around you, they hold you up, and even in those nervous moments, when you're a little unsure, they're like, no, you can do it, you can do it. We got you. And I think that's what that room was all about, and here we are today.
Yeah. Man, and 3 years going in next year, I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you for that, man.
Oh, thank you.
You almost had me going tears there, but I'm gonna hold it back.
Oh, no. That was all right.
Listen, when you talk about team, and before we start and switch fully into the business side, the NBA is in session. I don't think I have gone a year in my career covering the NBA without talking to you and getting some type of advice. Whether I was in San Antonio covering the Spurs, calling you up, hey, what do the Spurs need to do better? What are they doing here? Or seeing you when you came down there working for NBA TV. But again, we're almost 20 games in. One of the big rules I learned from Greg Popovich's staff is every 20 games is when you evaluate who you are, right?
Yes.
You can't do it after one game, after two. Every 20 games. Here we are approaching the 20-game mark, right, of the NBA season. What's been the biggest, or who has been the biggest surprise?
Well, you have to say Golden State.
Yeah.
I mean, what Steph Curry and Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, what they've been able to rebuild, get back, and hold on to has been really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, as we sit here today, they're the #1 seed in the West right now.
Yeah.
And so you have to be impressed with them. The disappointment has been the injuries, right? There's been so many injuries that have happened right now that makes it difficult. But as the season continues to progress, things will get better.
Yeah.
But Golden State, to me, and Steph Curry, that group there,
yeah, because we thought they were going to regress. We thought they were done. The dynasty was over, and here they are. Still a long season to go, but
still a long season.
But
the way they're playing,
yeah,
right? They're playing good basketball. They're moving. They're shooting. They're scoring. Minutes are down. They playing old school Bob Knight, Lute Olson basketball, which is great to see.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at even the Phoenix Suns, I mean, you're advising down there. I've been impressed with them because this is another team that people weren't giving a shot. But they got some continuity, right? They got a little bit of chemistry. Still bench. But is that a reason why you see maybe the Phoenix Suns or even Golden State Warriors a big continuity?
Yeah, and then they got the guns, right? Anytime you got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal on your team, you got a chance to win, right? And now they got good coaching. When you look at Phoenix right now, you got good coaching, you got good chemistry, but they're hurt now. So they got off to a really good start, but Durant being down, Beal being down, Booker got 44 last night, still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But when those guys are back and they got the coaching staff, I really like what I see there. Yeah,
on the East, I gotta ask. I'm from Philly. When you look at my Sixers, what do you see? I see a team that they don't have anything there. I just don't know, Zeke. What am I looking at with this Philadelphia squad? They're not respecting the game, is what I see.
They have talent. They got a lot of players.
Yeah.
They got a great city. They got a great fan base. But can they come together? chemistry-wise, right? Because with the injuries that they have, can you develop chemistry?
Yeah.
With George, Embiid, Maxey, they're already in and out. And will these three have enough time to play together? Just as we were asking with the Clippers. With Leonard, Harden and George, all of them being injured, they never developed chemistry, never had time to play together. Is this what we're getting ready to watch in Philly?
I think so. I mean, I don't remember a championship team like that. Even you look at the Miami Heat that came together that first year that just turned it on and win. Like, you need repetition, time.
Yes.
They haven't played no preseason basketball, and so how do you expect to just turn it on like that? And they're already in a hole, right? I mean, that's why I say I don't know if they're respecting the game or the season or the process.
I think they have respect for the game. I just don't know if they understand what the game requires for you to be a champion.
Right.
You can make the playoffs, but can you be a champion? And the game demands and requires a certain level of commitment, understanding, intelligence to be a champion. And I think they have respect for the game. I just don't think they understand what's required of them to be a champion.
Yeah. Well, speaking of future champions, you think Anthony Edwards will ever get one? Bad boy, man.
He's a bad boy, but it takes more than talent to win. There's a certain amount of chemistry and intellect that goes into winning. Very few people win. Very few people have championships, right? So you can have all the talent. You can jump real high and shoot and do all the things skill-wise, but mentally, can you master this game? And that's what it takes to be a champion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you still talk to young guys about business and about establishing their portfolio and establishing their business circles while they're at the highest level of attention with the NBA as the platform?
Yes, I do.
What do you tell them?
The access that you have now to intellect and to CEOs while you're playing. Every city that you go to, you should make it a point to reach out to the top 2-3 CEOs in that city, invite them to the game, have lunch with them, and see if they give you some advice. That's what I did, for years in the NBA. So when I got out of the NBA, I had a advisory board, so to speak. And while you're playing, your celebrity it gives you access. Your celebrity creates deal flow. And you can use your celebrity for deal flow. So that means you get a chance to look at some of the best deals that come in, but you have to have a pretty sharp group behind you that can let you know this is one we can look at, this is one we can't look at. And so I still help a lot of young guys right now.
Do they listen?
Some do, some don't. Because most of them, they have advisors also. And sometimes you conflict with what their advisors are giving them.
Yeah, but their advisors aren't you. You're a proven track record.
Yeah, but some of them don't see my record in the business community as well as they do on the floor.
Yeah.
Like in this champagne space, we've been in this space now 10 years and just starting to blow up, right? So this is the overnight success, but it's been 10 years and, getting ready to, I gotta find some wood. Getting ready to close a deal here on the champagne space that will really take us to the next level. But it's been 10 years of building and grinding in it. So there's no overnight success, but you gotta dot your I's, cross your T's, and you gotta stay alive.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into Isiah International, right? Because you just mentioned you have the champagne company as a part of it, the real estate and construction. Isiah Ticketing is a part of it, One World Production products. We'll get into some news about that in a minute. But I'm curious about the real estate and construction front, right? Because we are what one can consider in a housing crisis, right?
Yeah.
People aren't building. We got a whole bunch of people on the sidelines. Interest rates a little bit still high. So, but I would imagine 2025, things may pick up, right? What are you seeing or what are you guys looking at on the real estate construction front? And it make me feel good good about 2025, man, because again, the housing market is just not recovered the way that people thought it would.
Well, multifamily and affordable housing will be focused on heavily. Now, it all depends on the interest rates. Will you have access to capital the way you did maybe 8, 9 years ago? That's going to be the driver. But I do think that home ownership is still the best way to build wealth and to build equity.
Yeah.
In the affordable housing space, we operate in the multifamily and affordable housing space. And, you know, there's not enough housing in the United States right now.
Yeah.
So that factor, along with construction, will continue to grow, and that will be an emphasis, I'm hoping, of the new administration coming in.
Well, you're in that construction space. I mean, are you guys planning on, building? Are you guys looking at 2025? I mean, I know interest and the capital has to be there, but are you guys planning on doing any construction to get there? Everybody is, to me, I look at where the construction workers are. They're on the road. They're building. It's the infrastructure build. That's where they are, right? That's where all the money is. So what needs to happen for us to start to see building again?
So for myself, what I've looked at with One World Products is introducing a new raw material into the space. As opposed to using concrete, we'll start using hemp and what some people call hempcrete. Now, hemp takes carbon out of the air. It's just as strong in some places as concrete, or you can use them both together to create a new raw material that can be used not only to help the environment, but also strengthen the buildings also. So you have to find your niche and find a new way into a traditional market that you can play in. But if you're coming in trying to play like the established players who've been doing it one way for 100 years, and you want to compete the same way that they've been competing, of course they have an edge. Mm-hmm. So what I've tried to do is introduce, a new raw material. What's old is new when you talk about hemp. And hemp I see as a replacement not only for plastics, but I think it'll be used in every aspect of our daily lives.
Well, let's dive into that more, right? One World Products, you guys have the hemp-based molded containers, right? Mm-hmm. And you're in the supply chain with FlexGate, and you guys are making the boxes for FlexGate. This FlexIngate, this is an automotive supplier, right? So they make all the parts, the doors that you see, and they supply it, and you guys are making the packaging that they're going to ship these things in, right? You're in the supply chain, and you're moving hemp. One of the things I noticed in the release when you were announcing that you guys have the royalty payment, that you were moving away from the shift of going Colombian cannabis operations and going more into the packaging. Why the shift? What do you see in the supply chain that you're looking at opportunities?
Well, we started out, looking at hemp and growing THC cannabis in Colombia. The politics and the government was slow to react, so we put a pause there. But while we were working there, we were already establishing what we were going to do in the automotive space through the partnership with Stellantis. And you'll see a picture of me ringing a bell with Stellantis here, I think it was 2-3 years ago, where we announced our partnership there. And now we finally got to the point now where we've introduced the raw material into the automotive space. And the first entry was to come in packaging. So you see our hemp containers now, and our partner Orbis. Orbis is one of the biggest packaging container companies in the auto space. Yeah. West Michigan is our partner, and also FlexIngate. FlexIngate, they make the bumpers and everything that you do in automotive that's outside on the exterior of the automobile. FlexIngate is our partner. So introducing the raw material of hemp into this space, now we have the opportunity not only to be in packaging, but the next phase is how do we get into the interior of the automobile and also in the exterior of the automobile.
Right.
So we're working on...
So making those parts using your solution with the hemp.
Yes.
Wow.
And now every time that a package is shipped in the automobile space, you're helping the environment, you're reducing the carbon footprint, and with the electric automobiles continuing to move forward, like GM has a big push in EV. So your industrial hemp in our hemp, going in the automobile, helping with the dashboard to replace the plastics, looking up under the exterior of the car with the brackets. So we have a chance to not only, how can I say it, not only impact that market, but we also have a chance to be on every single car that goes out the door that's made nationally and internationally because of the product that we have.
Yeah. So in 2050, right, you could be looking at a lot of cars driving around with the bumper that your product, your solution possibly made.
If not the bumper, I'll have a product
somewhere in that car.
Somewhere on that car.
Right. Whether it's the plastic that you see on the dashboard, whether it's the stuff, and people may not know it, right?
Yeah, by 2050, absolutely. You know, and so the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Shakan, right? He owns Flexingate. And he started out putting a jack in every car.
A jack?
Just a jack. He was an employee there, and then he went from an employee to an owner just with one product. Now he puts several products in the cars.
Wow.
And that's where we are.
Yeah, right. And it's like that's the screw mentality. And the screw mentality for me is that you look around a room, and I tell people, what's the one thing holding everything together? It's the screw. Everybody wants to be the, and when you look at cars, and everybody wants to be the transmission or they want to be the engine because those are the two biggest things. And of course, they, you know, if you're looking at it from a company standpoint, they make the most money. But screws are the thing that holds everything. Why can't you make a lot of money on the screws?
And if I can put one bracket
in every car,
on every car, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, it's like my father used to tell me. He said, you said, Junior, I know you want all these fancy businesses. He said, but toilet paper is a good business.
Absolutely. So is toothpaste and everything else. That's a very
you gotta
good
use
business.
it every day.
Absolutely.
You gotta use it every day.
Anything else that you're looking at? I mean, listen, there's cybersecurity, AI startups. I was just down in Houston at Afrotech, and I know technology is a huge thing when it comes down to, you know, what the next generation of students, especially HP student units, are looking for. Cybersecurity companies, Gen AI startups. What else are you looking at?
No, I'm focused right now on just two spaces. Champagne space and One World products. You can't focus on too many things.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's been 10 years getting Shirlan Champagne to where it's at now. And now the shift goes to, okay, One World products, how do we move this? Because I look at it and I say, I got two companies, both of them are billion-dollar opportunities. And Shirlan has already got to that place where, knock on this wood, when this partner come in, it takes it to the next, takes it to that billion-dollar opportunity where now you can start executing on it.
Yeah.
Well, with One World products, it's the same thing. Now the focus is here, and we have a billion-dollar opportunity here now. So now you got to manage it and grow it. And those who start at the bottom with us, we're on the ticker now on the OTC. And those who start at the bottom with us, right, as this company grows, next time I'm back here, I want to be, you know, ringing the bell for NASDAQ, you know, and you've uplifted my company from the OTC to the NASDAQ.
Speaking to existence.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I've gone from a penny stock to a $4 stock, and once you do that, you know,
sky's the limit.
And that's my goal. It hasn't been done, you know, by a former player. So my goal is to be able to take that from the bottom, bring it to the top, and, you know, have NASDAQ, you know, uplift our company.
Absolutely, man. When you think about that, and again, you said it was a 10-year journey, right? You went from, let's go even further back because people may not know your story. You grew up in Chicago, right? Your parents, your mom worked at Our Lady of Sorrows Youth Center and Church, 6 brothers, 2 sisters. You were homeless at times. You're talking about sleeping on the floor in your closet at times because there wasn't enough bed space, right? Watching your brother shoot needles and do drugs, right? And having to go through all of that. Are you still in awe of the fact that you overcame that environment? Because most people born into that, as you know, you don't get out.
I'm in awe of the second generation of my family that I was able to help.
Yeah.
Because I spent all my MBA money cleaning up my family, laying a foundation, so they'll have a chance to get out of poverty. So my nieces, my nephew, my kids, my cousins, I still have some that don't eat or are living in hard times. But for the most part, the thing that I'm most proud of is that most of my nieces, nephews, when they go to their refrigerator, there's some food in the refrigerator.
Right.
When they leave their job, they got a house to go to or an apartment to stay in. And most of them have either graduated from college or had 2-3 years of college. And to me, that's the success story, not what I've done, but what my family is able to do now, because literally we were hanging on by a thread. If I don't make it to the NBA, honestly, I don't know what happens to us.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where the Thomas family goes.
Yeah.
Because we were that close, and you know, drugs and gang banging. You know, I grew up with murderers, like
That's
literally.
Chicago, right?
You know, so and every day you had to make a decision if you was gonna go right or left, and you had to make the right decision, because if you chose wrong,
You might not
your
make it
life
home.
might not
Yeah.
make it home.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's and that's one of my favorite quotes when I was listening to another podcast you on. You're on so many of them. Everybody loves talking to you, man. So much knowledge. But, you know, what stood out, you said, I spent my money trying to uplift my family out of poverty. And so you take your nieces and nephews and you, after they're done college, and you give them 6-month internships to
Yes.
work at one of your companies, right? And it has to be free.
Gotta work for free
It has to be
now.
for free.
Gotta
And if
work
they
for
like
free.
it afterwards, then you guys will talk job and opportunity. But I like that, you know, as far as giving them that, getting your money back, obviously. But, you know, when you see that formula, are you surprised a lot of other guys don't do it?
Well, most people don't look at their family the way I looked at mine, right? Most people look at what they're gonna do for themselves, and like, you know, Kendrick Lamar has a song, How Much a Dollar Costs, right? And for me, I wanted to invest not in myself, but invest in my family.
Yeah.
And when I look at my family now, and when you say, yeah, they come to a place to learn how to work, and for 6 months, they have to work free to pay off that debt, but at the same time, they really learning skills of how to operate in the corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you like it, okay, we can find a place for you to continue working. But if you don't like it, now at least you have the tools to go out in the world to compete and fend for yourself.
Yeah. I asked you at the BLK Summit to, you know, describe your career in one word. You said champion. And there's nobody that can deny that, right? Definitely a champion. But I also went back and I looked and I said, you know, look at a time after you were done that championship journey, right? You go back to 1994. I mean, you paid $12.5 million to become a 10% owner of the Toronto Raptors, right? That was an expansion team at that particular time, right? It included a 5-year deal, which had you include, you know, run operations. But you were the only black NBA owner at that point, and the 5th one to run basketball operations, right? What do you remember about that tenure, and is there anything you would do different? Because people may not remember that you were one of probably the first. Were you the first?
I was the first.
The first
Yes.
NBA owner who was black, right?
Of an international franchise
Yes.
outside of the United States,
right.
right? And so when you talk about the NBA being a global brand now, right? Still the only franchise that sits outside of the United States is the one that they trusted me to go and start and run. And what I'm most proud of is it's still standing today. There was one that started in Toronto.
In Vancouver.
And one in Vancouver. Vancouver is now in Memphis. And Toronto is still standing and have won the championship. Everything from the colors. Purple is my favorite color. And you know, you gotta have the black and gold from the west side of Chicago. So the colors are still there, from the mascot to the cheerleaders. Well, I would say the dance pack, right? We were the first to integrate our dance pack, because most of the dance teams used to be all female. We were the first ones that said, No, it's some brothers that can dance too that like to dance, right? So we integrated the dance fact, and now when you look across the NBA, you see integrated teams.
All over, yeah.
And we made a conscious effort to make sure that our crowd was diverse. And Toronto still today, when you look in those stands, it is still the most diverse crowd to come to an NBA game than any other place in the NBA. And that's what we started.
Yeah. Is there anything that you probably did not know that you picked up during that tenure that you still use today in business as far as, because you're running an operation at that point too, right?
I had to make a tough decision. I decided that I would leave Toronto and come back to the United States. And that decision was based on, okay, if I would have stayed there longer than 5 years, then I would have became a citizen, and a lot of my resources and money would have had to stay there. And then the team was changing. I tried to buy the team, and had I been able and successful enough to buy the team, I would have stayed there. But the thing that I learned was, it's not good being a minority owner when you can't call the shots. You know, when you have to put up the money, and you can't run your own show, that's not a good feeling. And I didn't like that feeling. So the thing that I learned was that I always want to own and control.
Right.
And if I'm a part of, then I got to be a part of with somebody that I trust and that I know he or she knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the ownership landscape today, right, what do you see? I mean, there's players all over. Dwayne Wade is a minority owner out in Utah. Junior Brisbane, right? The great Junior Brisbane supported a minority stake in the Milwaukee Bucks. Are you happy with the current landscape, even though Michael Jordan, he's not a majority owner anymore, so they lost their only black majority owner, and they'll be losing their only black CEO, and St. Marshall, she's leaving as well. So issues still that the NBA needs to fix from a diversity standpoint, and front offices as well as ownership. But when you see what you see today, you like where it's headed?
I like where it's headed because you still have a voice at the table.
Yeah.
So Junior Brisbane coming in, D. Wade being there, several others wanted to get involved. I like seeing that. The thing that I hope is not happening is that they're putting their money up, but they can never get their money out. Because the ownership structure, if it's built in such a way that team gets passed down generationally in the family. And if you're not part of the family, then you're just helping to pay the bills. So I'm hoping that, they have clauses in those agreements where they call it a put option, where they can put it back to the entity and get fair market value anytime they want to exit or leave.
Right.
But if their money is just tied up and they can't get it out, and there's no put option, then that money is just helping the majority owner pay the bills.
Yeah. And I hope you tell these guys this, then,
Well, some, and then they have advisors. So.
Advisors, right? Yeah. Listen, moving ahead, man, as we wrap up, what do you seek in an entrepreneur in 2024? Like, what does Isiah Thomas look for? I mean, listen, you've been through it all, right? Again, 2-time NBA champion, 12-time star, all-star, CEO of Vine International. When you're looking at entrepreneurs and they're pitching you business plans, because I know you get them all the time, what do you want to see from them and from their business plan?
You look at the human being and you ask this question: can he or she persevere through the bad times? Because it ain't gonna always be good. Whatever projections you have on the paper, that look good, but it ain't gonna happen that way. That 4 or 5 year plan, it ain't gonna happen that way. Now, when the times get hard, and they really, really get hard, do you as a person have enough in you to get through those hard times? Because the one thing that's guaranteed being an entrepreneur, and my background is startups and turnarounds. So in startup businesses, the one thing that's guaranteed is there going to be some extremely hard, difficult times? And do you have the perseverance to come through those times? You're going to cry at night. A lot of people are going to say no to you.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to knock on 1,000 doors and you're going to get 1,000 no's.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to tell you that you can't sell this champagne.
Yeah.
You can't be in this business. But do you have the perseverance to stick it through? And it may not come down to just capital, right? Because most people will say, well, if somebody gave me the money, then I can do A, B, and C. But most of the time, ain't nobody gonna give you the money when you that low.
Yeah.
They only want to pick the winner. When you're riding high, that's when they want to give you a whole lot of money, right? But when you down here struggling, trying to make it, ain't nobody trying to help you. Do you have the perseverance to really
Yeah.
rise up to where somebody can help you? Because when you're this low, ain't nobody gonna help you.
Yeah.
And when ain't nobody gonna help you, can you help yourself?
Is that what it takes to be a champion too? Perseverance?
100%. And intelligence. Like the game in the NBA, right? It's not about skill and it's not about talent. It's a thinking man's game. And all different sizes and shapes are winners, right? This was a game that a 5'3" Muggsy Bogues could succeed and be an NBA player. Why? Because he could understand it, he could think it. This is a game where Mark Jackson, who couldn't jump really high, wasn't really fast, but he can read it and he can understand it. So he can make the game do what he needed to do. And the guys who can jump high, run fast, and are real tall, they have genetic gifts that most of us don't have. But the champion can take those genetic gifts and combine it with an intellect and dominate.
Got some students here, man, from Chestnut Hill College in Pennsylvania, right? Where I grew up at, although I went to Temple, right? And they're here before my mom out of here. And I wanted them to ask some questions, and they submitted two. What leadership qualities do you believe are essential for success, both on and off the court? And this is from Avery White, 2026 Business and Administrations Management with a minor in accounting. Avery, thank you for the question. What leadership qualities do you seek on and off the floor?
It all depends on what type of leader you want to be. Like, I am more of a compassionate leader. There are some leaders who are dictators, in my way or the highway. So my understanding of leadership, I inspire, and I want to inspire and get the best out of that person. So I would say compassion and understanding, and can I meet you in a place where you're at, and then inspire you from there.
Yeah, yeah. Another one coming. How do you prioritize and make decisions when faced with multiple opportunities or challenging? This is coming from Seiko. Seiko, obviously a good friend of ours, God bless his life, he died, so his name stood out. Business and business administration and management major. So how do you prioritize and make decisions when you're faced with challenges and opportunities?
You look inside, right? What are your ethics? What are your morals? What are your values? What's driving you? And once you understand that, then the decision becomes easy, right? And I've been put in a lot of situations where you can compromise yourself, your dignity for money. Now, if money is your driver and money is your measurement for success, then you're going for the money, but you may not sleep well at night. Those who compromise themselves, lose their dignity, they have to do some things that, you're not willing to do. So it really depends on who you are, what you are about, what you stand for, what your values are, what your morals are, and then you make a decision from that place.
Yeah. President-elect Trump calls you up and says, Isiah, what advice do you have for me on how to level the business landscape, right? Keeping in mind the black families in rural areas? Because we obviously know rural communities spoke this past election. There's black families out there too. Keeping that in mind, what do you tell President-elect Donald Trump about how to level the playing field for business?
First of all, I would thank him for inviting me to the table.
Yeah.
And you got to go to the table to
Yeah.
have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And if he can keep it at the kitchen table, how do we eat? Where can we work? And how much we get paid? Those three things, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Show me how we do that. And then from there, on the business side, right? Can you give us some pathways in the system that has systemically discriminated against skin color for so many years? Can your administration create pathways that we don't necessarily have to face this discrimination only because we have more melanin in our skin than you do? We are governed in a country right now, sadly, where, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, your skin color, the melanin in your skin decides the disadvantages or advantages you get. This is the craziest thing that we living in. And we talk about apartheid, but there are some systematic things in our country that's apartheid. And they like to quote Martin Luther King and say, I don't want to be judged by the color of my skin, but the content of my character. But yet then we have to check the box, black, brown, blue, purple, or orange.
Yeah.
What we doing?
Yeah, judging us. Yeah. Hey, man, get you out of here on this. And I'll switch it up, right? Because I always do the good, the great question because of Jim Collins' book, Good, the Great. What is the difference between a good point guard and a great one? Or what will be the difference between good point guards and great point guards as we approach the midway point of the decade all the way till 2030? Because the game's changing. And I'm sure by 2030, Isiah, LeBron's probably not going to be here, Steph's not going to be here, but the point guard position will remain. And you played that position, I think, and I admire your opinion on that stuff. What's going to be the difference between good and great point guards as we move forward?
The difference is always, in my opinion, who's smarter, right? The great point guards, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They score the basketball when they need to score it. They pass it when they need to pass it. But they understand your scheme better than you do. So every time you make a mistake, I know how to take advantage of your mistake.
Yeah.
So it's not from, in basketball, people always talk about the sport from the neck down, but the game is really played from the neck up.
That's right.
The great players and the champions, they play it from up here, and the good players, they play it from the neck down.
Yeah, that's a quick story. I mean, I knew it was head. Not only talking to you, when I was covering the San Antonio Spurs, and LeBron was with the Cleveland Cavaliers at that point, and I was asking assistant coach from the Spurs to say, hey, y'all going to run this high-low play tonight? He said, no, we can't do that. I was like, why? He says, because LeBron will read that and he'll just interrupt it. I'm like, wait, he's that? That's all he just, and I'm like, man. And so you got to be smart in order to excel and to be champions. That's why you are, he is, and all the other champions are.
That's the thing that always fascinated me about LeBron. And that's why I called him like the Einstein of basketball. Because we all had great teachers. Like I had my high school coaches in the Hall of Fame, my college coach, Coach Knight is in the Hall of Fame, Chuck Daly's in the Hall of Fame. You look at Michael Jordan, Dean Smith in the Hall of Fame, Phil Jackson in the Hall of Fame. I mean, we had great teachers and educators, right? Who's his teacher?
That's right.
Who taught him all this?
He did.
He came from high school. You just don't come from high school in the All-League and go to the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you just don't do that. And he went to the NBA Finals with, his cast wasn't that great. You was covering that San Antonio team, like, You know, I don't think LeBron James, he's been to what, 10 finals? He's been to 10 finals, and I can think of only 4 where he's been the favorite.
Yeah.
That's how good he's been.
Yeah. Can't give it. I mean, listen, man. The brother is who he is, man. You gotta give it up to LeBron James, probably the greatest player up until this point that's played it. And maybe we'll see another one. Maybe Ant Edwards could be from behind. You gotta get his mental right. maybe he'll be right there.
Somebody's coming. You can rest assured. There's always somebody coming.
Yeah. But for now, let it be known.
Yes,
Isiah
sir.
Thomas was here. Appreciate all the time.
Unknown to a known.
Unknown to a known. Zeke, appreciate the time, man. Good luck the rest of the NBA season.
Thank you.
I know you got your work at NBA TV, and I cannot wait to see the bumpers on the cars. Well,
it won't be the bumpers. You probably have to
underneath.
You have to look underneath the car.
Maybe I'll see it on a cup holder, the plastic.
But for right now, it's just the packaging. We're gonna deliver the bumper in.
There you go.
Okay, you can take this bumper out.
Absolutely.
But that package is mine.
Absolutely. It's sustainability anyways. It's still good,
it
man.
works.
Absolutely. Jabbar Young here at the NASDAQ market site. Let it be known, Isiah Thomas was with me. See you next time.
Money on its own is not the most important thing, but money is the foundation of all of the things that are important.
Behind every great story of business success, there is one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, or even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had legendary investor Benjamin Graham. And Christina Lewis has Reginald Lewis, her late father and the man who was, in the early 90s, the first Black man to own a billion-dollar business. Christina Lewis likes to describe herself as a philanthropreneur, a perfect blend of a for-profit entrepreneur and a mission-oriented philanthropist. It's a mindset she inherited from her father. He died an untimely death in 1993 when Christina was just 12 years old. While most people can say that a parent is the one who changed everything for them, Christina's story is a little different. In this season of her life, which finds her as the founder of a wealth management company for women and people of color, she sees all the ways in which her father and his teachings guide her everyday decisions.
Christina Lewis, you are a philanthropreneur. You have founded several organizations to help Black people, Black families, promote Black wealth. Thank you for sitting down with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we are all products of our families, quite literally, biologically. But this series is called The One Who Changed Everything.
Yes.
The people without whom we would not be sitting in these seats. So please tell us who your one is.
Yeah, so my one is my dad. His name was Reginald Lewis. He was the first Black person to own a billion-dollar company here in the United States. And he has a really interesting, inspiring, and iconic story. He was born in 1942 in segregated Baltimore. At the end of his life, he was the richest Black man in America. And his death at the height of his powers is a tragedy that also, of course, really influenced me as well.
I know his death made a huge impact on you, but let's talk about the years in which you got to have him in your life. What do you remember about him in your childhood?
You'd call him today a girl dad. He taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me about investing. He had me be his stockbroker. He showed me how to read the stock tables in the newspaper in the morning, and then at the end of the day, call into the exchange, on the touchtone phone, and get the day's closing stock price.
How old were you when he did this?
I was about 7.
So you're 7 years old, sitting down with your dad, going over the stock prices in the newspaper?
Yep, in the morning before he'd take me to school.
I remember learning about money in kindergarten, where you had the plastic coins, and I was obsessed with collecting a different type of coin and making sure I had one version of every currency that they taught us. So there's something about that early exposure to money that I think is really formative.
It is. It's really formative, and that's something that I definitely was taught by him and emulated, and I think that's why he fostered it, teaching me about investing. So it's not enough to save, but also enough, have to invest.
So what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were 7 years old, did you think you'd go into banking?
I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
Like my dad was. So he was, he was an attorney, and that was his job. Mm-hmm. But then he started buying companies. Mm-hmm. As an attorney, a corporate attorney, his company was the first Black-owned law firm on Wall Street. They helped structure deals for other people, a lot of other minority-owned businesses. Then in the 80s, he started doing his own deals, but he was still running the law firm. When he was a lawyer, that all made sense, right? Because that's a normal job. I remember as he started actually buying companies, things got all confusing, right? We were doing better financially, but I didn't know what to tell people at school, about what he did, right? Can I say he buys and sells companies? That sounds really weird. I asked him one day and he said, tell them I'm a philanthropist. And he was very much about giving as you climb. And that's also something that I've worked to emulate. He was always successful, always giving back, starting from, when he first graduated from law school that year, he gave back $10. Then going through, he just started giving more and more, giving to schools, giving to libraries. And I think in all of those things, I wanted to emulate that also. So long story short, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I just wanted to go work for him.
But then he passes, and you are how old when he dies?
So I was 12 when Dad died.
Wow.
And obviously it was really, really hard. It's really, really hard. And it complicated for me the life I wanted to have in business and also my inheritance. And I think that's another reason why wealth management is so important for me.
I was going to say, I was doing a lot of reading on you, and I think you started meeting with a financial advisor twice a year when you were still a teen. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that like? Because that is not a traditional teenage experience.
So the first time was shortly after my dad had died. Just a few weeks after, so I was 13. The money manager sat me down, he had this book, and he asked me if I knew what a stock was. Now, I think he was thrilled to see that I actually did. He walked me through the whole thing, and he walked me through asset allocation and stocks and bonds. And at the end, we've agreed that he will invest in Disney and The Limited. I've been shocked to learn that The Limited didn't just own The Limited, it owned Banana Republic, I think, and Express. And this is how I first got into investing stocks.
Based off of the companies that you were probably interested in as a 13-year-old.
Yeah. And now today, having spent more time in this, that is the natural way to get children involved in the stock market. You focus on something that they know. And that's actually something I did with my own children. They're various ages. They're 12, 9, and 4. So with my older two, I bought them a stock certificate. You can buy the stock and you have a paper certificate so you can put on the wall so the kids can see it. My son also has this app that allow him to invest.
Okay.
So we met recently to look at his portfolio because he bought Tesla in the dip. So it's gone up a lot and he's thinking about rebalancing. And so I actually took with him one of my investment outlook statements from one of my wealth manager meetings, and we went in front of it, and it was about the Magnificent Seven, NVIDIA and the tech stocks that have all gone up. So I explained it to him, and so he made a decision about how to rebalance. We're going to sell half of Tesla and put it into another one of the Magnificent Seven.
Wow, you're really paying your dad's legacy forward.
I guess just talking about it now, I'm like, oh wow, we really are
like father, like daughter,
doing a lot with it, and his grandson.
Before your dad died, you wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. How did you find your path in your 20s? Did you feel lost at all in those years?
I did feel lost in those years, though. At the time, I would have said I knew exactly what I was doing, which was I was going to get great grades so I could go to a great school, so then I could get a great job, and everyone would be proud of me. That basically was the plan. What kind of great job? I didn't know. It just needed to be impressive. What school, what college? Well, the one that my dad or parents would make them most happy. I ended up, though, finding a real passion in journalism. I was a business reporter, and I loved, again, I already knew about investing and companies, and so I ended up covering real estate and writing about homes designed, also writing about families, the entrepreneurs and business people and families that owned a lot of land and were developing real estate here in the city, but around the country. That took me back to this theme that really is the theme that inspires me so much, which is about wealth and families and how people structure it. So even as I was writing all these articles, I'd found this zone that related to all these things that were important for my life, how you raise children with wealth. After doing that for a while, which I loved, and I made so many great friends, I realized that I didn't want to just observe and write about the world. I had all these ideas. Things that I felt should exist. So I think just my natural inclination, what I inherited from my dad, which is this desire to drive change, vision, and creating things, kind of spurred me to look beyond just writing about things, but actually do them. So I ended up starting my first organization, which was a nonprofit. It's called All-Star Code. It is a computer science education nonprofit that teaches coding to men of color. And the idea behind it was that this was in 2013, tech was this engine of job growth and wealth creation, and there was this focus on not leaving anyone behind, and a great impetus on teaching girls to code. Yet there was this group that was being kind of left behind in the race to leave no one behind. There was talent there that could really benefit from a leg up, from a boost, from education. And that also came, and I knew that there were boys who could benefit from that leg up because my dad actually had benefited from that in the 1960s.
So other than the obvious, the biological, how has your father impacted you? And why do you say you are sitting here today because of him?
I remember just every time something difficult would come Dad's way, he would make a plan to overcome it. And that is just absolutely what I inherited and what I look to emulate. I remember coming into our dining room, and this was in Paris. We lived in Paris for 4.5 years, so I was maybe 10, and Dad's having a meeting. He didn't usually have meetings at home. So I go into our dining room, and it's my dad, and then it's 10 guys, all white guys. And I run in, and I'm wearing like shorts and a t-shirt. I forget why. I think it was even the weekend. I'm not sure what was happening. And all the guys like jump up, like stand up. They were sitting, and they all like stand up and come to attention, like the military. And my dad's there, and he like sort of like turns around. He's like, "Hi, Christina." I am I'm just scared and terrified. First that there are strange people in this house, and then that they're standing to attention like the Queen's come in or something. So I'm about to like run out, because I was trying to just get to my room. But Dad's like, no, come here. So I come there in like my shorts and everything. And he introduces me. I think maybe I shake every hand, or whatever. But he like kind of brings me close, kind of gets me comfortable with this whole situation. Thinking back on that moment, it's really, I think, unheard of or unique for a Black girl to have an experience where a bunch of like white men treat her with such respect. And I do think at some level that experience and happening at such a young age, in a way, did change everything for me.
It empowered you.
It empowered me, yeah. And just, it's a zone. I grew up in this zone where that's normal and that can happen, and that I knew what that felt like, just to have respect, that kind of respect. And of course, my dad had earned that respect, and then just as a result of being his daughter, I inherited it. And now I'm trying to pay it forward and give other people that feeling.
So Christina, we are standing in your office. It's beautiful.
Yes.
This is your father's schedule from 1963.
Yep, 1963 or so. Don't know exactly, but when he was at Virginia State, a historically black college down in Virginia. So this embodies his ethos: make a plan, execute, do your homework, and follow through. It embodies the secret to his success, what I learned. My grandmother, his mom, actually saved that copy because he did dozens of those, because as the schedule changed, he'd redo a new one. And it outlines every hour of the day, Monday to Friday, of what he needs to do and when, so that he can succeed, achieve his goals. Begin the day, get up to lights out every hour, Monday through Friday, every moment, scheduled to help him get to what he needed to do. Well, except for here. So, and even I love he's scheduled in, what does he call it? Recreation.
He gave himself a very precise hour and 15 minutes of recreation.
And 15 minutes of recreation. What that was, I don't know.
And then we have a few awards and commemorative plaques. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could start with this guy at the bottom.
Yeah, so these two, I think we can put together. This is a Champion of Change award I got for STEM access for my work starting All-Star Code. The organization has graduated over 1,000 students, and many of them pipelining into jobs at terrific tech companies as software engineers, and well over 90% graduating from four-year colleges after doing our summer program.
That's incredible.
This award, though, also is just as important. It says the 10 under 20 Young Innovators to Watch Award. And this wasn't given to me. It was given by some of my All-Star Code students because they said that it's because of what All-Star Code instilled in them.
What is your new company called?
My new company is called Beatrice Advisors. It's an independent, woman and minority-owned multifamily office. Its mission is simple. It's to deliver high-quality financial services to this new generation of wealth.
What gave you the idea to start this?
Well, I've been a client of wealth management firms for 30 years now, and over the course of time, I've found a particular model that I think really works for me as a woman, as a Black and Asian person who didn't come from a tradition of multi-generational wealth. And I think it's time to share it with others.
Do you think the traditional financial services industry is not serving women and people of color as effectively as it could have?
I think wealth management needs modernizing. So that's what we're trying to do. We're modernizing wealth management. The company is tech-enabled, and it's focused on empowering clients, not just handing them financial documents to check some boxes and then go off on their day. But we want to really empower our clients to be able to take ownership over their own finances and deliver value to them as far as returns, also as far as helping them meet their goals.
How are you finding clients? Have you been operating in stealth for a little while and this is your big unveiling?
We have been operating in stealth. I've been working on this business for over 2 years now, and we've got a pilot group of clients. We have an amount of discretionary capital to manage. This will be managing my money, my assets, doing all of my planning, and opening it up to others. We're ready. It's the biggest thing I've ever done.
It's the biggest thing you've ever done.
The biggest, most important thing, most impactful thing I have done and will ever do.
What makes you say that?
Money on its own is not the most important thing, but money is the foundation of all of the things that are important. All the things that we want, today you have to pay for with money. Now, they say it can't buy you love, but everything else is money. So the way that it's invested and the way that it's managed is the foundation, I believe, for a healthy, successful life. That's what I found for me and for my family.
You talked about the stock lessons that your dad gave you when you were 7. Did he ever sit you down and give you business lessons that you use today? I mean, starting a new company is not easy. Do you ever look back to conversations with him or even just the model that he gave in order to navigate the challenges of starting up?
Dad was from another era, and he had a different way of doing things. He was a 1980s finance guy. Now, it was a cutthroat time, on Wall Street. So there are some things he did that I've had to learn. I think you can be successful and not necessarily do it that way. And I was having this joke with a friend of mine. One of the big things in the book is set your terms up front, which actually came from my grandmother, his mother. And it's about negotiation, setting your terms up front. And something? I don't really do that. I go and I like the person, and we have an idea of what we're going to do, and of course at a basic level, but I'll just be like, well, let's see how it goes, and then we'll and then we'll arrange, because this is relationship, and we want the best for each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that, of course, yes, you set your terms up front, and I do use that. Yet at the same time, I don't like to negotiate. For example, I just say what I want, and then you say what you want, and then I'll either do yes, no, but we're not negotiating. To some extent, I think that if you're trying to work with someone over the long term and they tell you what they want, and to counter it with, now maybe I'm going to come off as super Pollyanna, but I think if it's a relationship, I'm telling someone what I want, I'm telling them what I want. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you the truth. So are you going to do it or not? I'm not, I don't, why is it necessary, especially when it's a relationship? I think when it's an acquisition, it can be different. Mm-hmm. It's different because that's sort of a one and done thing. That if I'm working with someone, pay me. And if someone says, well, I want to be paid this. And if I say, well, I'll pay you 20% less, I feel like you're almost calling that person a liar. Because I just trust that's what you want to be paid. And if I think it's too expensive, I just won't hire them. Mm. No. So it's not necessarily just taking whatever you're given, but just not going around.
What do you hope for Beatrice 2.0 to accomplish?
I hope Beatrice Advisors helps our clients achieve their goals, achieve, their dreams, secure their legacy, their prosperity. I hope that our clients, many of them have worked so hard for their money, we help them ensure that they keep it, that they preserve it and keep it and grow it. I think it's so sad when you have someone who's, again, worked so hard, for what they've built, and then as a result of, poor planning, or any number of things, end up having to start over, or not getting that easy retirement that they thought they should. So I want to help people have healthy, successful families while preserving and growing their wealth.
So how big could Beatrice get? What's your projected or desired AUM?
We want to grow client by client, mm-hmm. And family by family with this business. We are serving a unique group of clients, not just because they have, say, a high net worth or a lot of money. We're looking for people the clients who will want to work with us, who want to develop a relationship with us are those who are intellectually curious, who are engaged in their finances, willing to put in the time to really understand what it is we're doing and partner with us for decades. And so it's important to us to grow client by client, family by family. Certainly we have certain revenue targets, and I'm not thinking about, a certain size. I want to own this business forever. I want it to be a privately owned business forever. So we're not focused on those kinds of targets.
So you're building your own legacy.
Yes. Building my own legacy, and the Lewis legacy, the Lewis Halpern family, and what's next.
If you look at the shape of the last 30 years geopolitically, it's pretty obvious that what happens in the rise and fall of great nations is that step 1 is great success, step 2 is hard industrial power, step 3 is outsource all of the hard industrial power to lower cost countries. And then step 4 is, because you did that, you lost what made the country powerful and strong in the first place. And eventually that comes home to roost.
You've probably followed the stats that American manufacturing has actually declined in the past few years. It's actually stagnated. And I think that's because they've just hit a wall. There is no real productivity leap. There is no supercharged fuel underneath that will allow them to continue to grow. The old processes that were invented in the 1900s, the mid-1900s, just are done. They just don't work. They've gotten out all they can get out of them, and now they've started to slide backwards.
Los Angeles-based Hadrian has raised $180 million in venture funding to build out software-enabled factories for high-precision machine parts for aerospace and defense companies.
It was a real culture paradigm shift that we realized was, it's not about automating something because manufacturing people don't know what they're doing. It's just, how do you get the knowledge out of their heads, systemize it, get it in software and automation? That's really the trick.
Hadrian's founder is Chris Power. He's a 33-year-old Australian immigrant.
Australia is the best place to grow up or retire. Very rarely does anything big happen there. So personally, it always felt like sitting at the kids' table at Christmas. It was pretty obvious that the US is kind of the last great democratic experiment. In the next 50 years, it will be decided whether the CCP rules the world or it continues to be like a Western-led American order.
Hadrian's big idea was to build its own software-enabled facilities, rather than selling software to existing ones.
We're a company full of slightly insane people that believe in something slightly greater than themselves. We work with basically startups who are trying to develop new technology, either for space, the DoD, or deep tech in general. Neoprimes, where they're starting to become these massive companies and need a lot of manufacturing support. So our job is to basically accelerate the new entrants while helping the legacy or massive entrants that are the pillars of this country's manufacturing base transform their operations with technology and services very, very, very quickly.
Most automation is built around a very defined product, and automotive is probably the best parallel. So you have a production line making X type of cars or variations of cars, and you build automation in the highly repeatable task of where you're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. It works really well even in a machining environment when you're going to make a small subset of parts at a high rate. Where it tends to break is in introducing a mass amount of variability, and that's what our system was designed to go ingest. And so both with how we set up our process as well as how the automation is built is to try and take mass ambiguity and break it down into a set of standardized functions or tasks to make it digestible, to make it effective, and to really kind of give us a lot more of that variability management that you would typically struggle with.
Chris Power first approached SpaceX employee Chris Baker back in 2021 with what seemed like a crazy idea.
Chris originally reached out when I was managing the machine shops at SpaceX and had this wild idea that he wanted to automate the work I was doing in that factory. At the time, it was an extremely chaotic environment and was proof to me that what he was trying to push was not going to work. I think you lose a lot of faith in the fact that this can be automated when you've been surrounded by the type of hardware that we have to manufacture and the amount of different variables, both like human and just physics-based problems that the space is surrounded with. And you lose a lot of trust that you can really get down into each and every variable, standardize it, and build a system that can be replicated without a ton of human intervention.
Despite his original skepticism, Baker decided to join Power at his startup, named after the Roman emperor. Power, who is both relentless and charming, soon convinced investors to back his idea too.
Investing in Chris Power was a wonderful experience because he's one of those founders who's a true visionary. And he lights up, not just a room, but a whole market. He explains the need in terms of the supply going down, the demand going way up, in such a way that if you didn't know you needed it, now you know you needed it.
Chris's very first principles will challenge every aspect of anything you're saying cannot happen, and really gets you to question kind of your underlying philosophy of, why am I against this? What is holding me back? And so I think it's an extremely aggressively helpful way of approaching what we're going and building and what we're going and doing, because if you don't know at its core why it can't work, then you sure as hell better go figure it out.
It's long been hard for manufacturers to find people who want to work there.
You've got millions and millions of high-skilled labor shortage that is going to get worse because people are retiring. So we could train 10,000, 100,000 people over the next couple of years. We can't train millions. So it's like, how are they 10x more effective with software and robotics? And then where is the pool of people that we can make manufacturing exciting for, give them a great career? One of our core mission statements is to make meaningful jobs for the American workforce, and I think it's one of the things we've done the strongest at. The majority of the tour and interview process is held out on the floor around equipment, and a core element is seeing how they engage, what type of questions they ask, how interested they are in the specifics versus it just being a job or something to collect a paycheck. It's really, where are the pools of people that have similar skills that we can draw from and bring them into this industry where there is high talent density? And that's, retail, hospitality, oil and gas, ex-military, nurses, really anybody who wants to, who is able and willing to go. So we are down to a point where we can train and onboard anybody in 30 days. And the first part of that is using software and robotics to make it a lot less complicated. And the other part is training and workforce development to enable the new people coming in to be successful and grow as fast as they can grow.
The variety of people we have here is really cool. We have really super smart people and equally smart people without the experience, people who, this might be their first job.
Some of us have that context and have a little bit of mechanical engineering and manufacturing background. Most people really don't, and so when we try to bring them in here, we kind of tell them hey, we're going to teach you all that. The thing that you need is to be interested.
When I joined manufacturing, it was this dated thing that nobody wanted to be a part of, and I think we're building something that can change that dynamic. And so the entire kind of strength of the U.S. economy, the U.S. defense program, is built on the ability to go build things internal to the U.S., and I think we have the ability to go scale that, and we have the ability to get more people familiar and exposed in this environment and make them effective quickly.
Hadrian's revenue reached an estimated $3 million last year, its first year of commercial operations. This year, Power figures it will grow tenfold to at least $30 million. After that, he has big plans to open additional factories around the country.
So we invested in the summer of 2021, and the product was just being built at that time. So it has really gone from zero to exponential growth in that timeline. They've, not only brought their product to life, they've built a factory around it now, put those CNC machines on their software platform, and now have a wonderful set of customers, many of which are of course confidential, but are growing really, really well and have supercharged demand in that space.
In terms of where we were 2 years ago, or what we thought could have possibly happened, is we blown our expectations out of the water, and the proof is really in what customers think and also just how efficiently we're operating. We are 300 to 400% more efficient on how we utilize our capital equipment. Usually machines run 20% of the time. We are running at 79%, 80%, so we can get more with less. Secondly, we are about 6 to 10x more efficient on a workforce productivity basis.
It's been 4 years since Chris and I really started talking. And again, I started in this very, I can't believe you're trying to do that, good luck state. Today we're about 100,000 square feet. It's a relative size of where we'll build our next factory as we bolt on different capabilities or really look to grow the size of the hardware we support. This is kind of the playbook we're trying to go build out and define for those future factories. But the ambition of the company is truly going to scale with us. And so the amount of processes we support, what we're trying to do to really be a single source is really going to stress what that playbook looks like as we grow.
The long-term vision is that we will do everything for everybody in core manufacturing for the US. Every 6 months or so, we roll out one of those new product lines to customers to expand the capability of what we can do. So ultimately, we will have, 50 or so kind of very large facilities specialized in each of those areas so customers can tap into any one of those services depending on what they're making.
What all leaders should aspire to do is make yourself obsolete. I think the interesting thing about Hadrian is I have no line of sight or vision to being able to do that based on the ambition of scale and growth, how we develop the workforce, just the amount of challenges in front of us, both technically with people, with just infrastructure in the country is so impactful and large that I really don't know where the road ends.
I think if we can look back in a decade, yes, we're financially successful, but the test that I want to see is a guy or a girl is 17, they're deciding on what to do, and they're bragging to their friend at a bar that they got a job in manufacturing, they're really excited about it, opposed to, a software engineering job and a finance job. If we can make that cultural shift, that is the biggest thing because everything is downstream from that.
Transforming small business development, creating solopreneurs and micro businesses, all in efforts of circulating the black dollar among black businesses. That is the mission of Dr. Lakeisha Holman, CEO of Village Retail. We'll dive into all of that and more for our journey, the Forbes BLK series right now. And we are here with Dr. Holman, Dr. Key. I'm gonna call you Dr. Key throughout this whole interview here in Atlanta at the Village Retail. Thank you so much for inviting us into your space. This store is wonderful.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Y'all are always welcome to come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm excited for this conversation today.
Listen, when I leave, I'm gonna have to buy a whole bunch of stuff in here too. So when I come back, I might be broke, right? So
don't be broke, but buy a lot of things.
Buy a lot of stuff. Okay. So how's your 2024 been? What's going on with the business before we dive into all of that stuff, your background? So much to talk about here as we lead up to our journey to Forbes BLK series in June. How's 2024 been for you?
2024 has been busy.
Yeah.
That is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That's owning businesses. And so I will say that we continue to grow and scale. And because of that, we're being stretched as a company, as an organization. Personally, though, I am doing phenomenal because I ground myself to make sure that I'm well in mind, body, and spirit, and that flows into my business.
Yeah. What's it like to be CEO of a retail store? And also you're the director of a nonprofit, right? If I'm not mistaken, the One Village United nonprofit. But what's it like? That's two jobs, but what's it like to be CEO?
Yes, so to be the CEO of the Village Market, the Village Retail, where we are today, and be the founder and executive director for our Village United, the nonprofit arm, number one, it feels like an honor. I am deeply grateful to be able to have a vision and a team to get behind the vision that I have in mind. But all with the gratefulness and all of that, it also requires a challenge. Every single day, I am positioned to have to answer and solve big problems. Yeah. Some days are slower than others, but one day I can wake up with an email of a litany of things that I need to address. And the next day, there'll be a litany of things that I need to celebrate. Yeah. And I think that's how entrepreneurship feels. Yeah. It's the highs and lows. And so why the work is made possible for me is because I have a really great team. And as a leader, I really believe in servant leadership, working side by side with my team, enabling them to push the mission forward.
Yeah. So take me inside, right, of Village Retail. I mean, I'm looking around and I see greatness in these stores, right? Me and you were talking off camera and I was trying to find the next entrepreneur that I want to talk to, right? And thank you for your help. We identified one. But I'm looking around and I'm just seeing so much stuff. I can't buy it all, not today, but I feel like I'm in a black mega mall, right? And all of these products are black owned. Take me inside of the Village Retail and explain for those people who may not know, and I want them to come to these doors and buy it, but what's going on here?
So before there was a retail store, before I knew anything about retail, I launched the Village Market in 2016. And my vision behind the Village Market was to create quarterly nighttime marketplaces to center Black entrepreneurship, to galvanize the community, to circulate the dollar. And so these are some sexy events. People came out and spent loads of money, and we began to attract entrepreneurs from all over America. Wow. And so originally we began with 25 businesses. And in 2019, we had up to 150 coming from 26 different states. And so that was phenomenal. And what happened to me happened to hundreds of entrepreneurs across the country and globally. The pandemic happened in the spring of 2020. Yeah. And so that shuttered my business model of the Village Market. Not shuttered, paused it, and it allowed me to pivot. As I had those months to envision what would be my place in the world after this pandemic, I had the vision of building the Village Retail where we are today. And so I got an opportunity to pivot, and that's the testament of entrepreneurship. And I'm a former basketball player. So the pivot can really get you to the basket. And so I had an opportunity then to figure out, I'm working with all these entrepreneurs. When the world opened up, do I want to continue in a quarterly marketplace, or do I want to open something that is open every single day, where I can have placement and give entrepreneurs their very, very first time in retail to help them grow and scale and to welcome shoppers from all over the world. So Jabari, with little experience, I began to dream of the Village Retail. And I reached out to entrepreneurs whom I work with the Village Market. And I said, I need you to trust me. I know now it doesn't look like the world is going to open back up, but the world is going to open back up. And when the world opens up, there will be a Village Retail and your products will be on the shelves. And so that is what we're in today. Looking at over 35 different brands, many of them dreamed of one day being in Ponce City Market. But to be in the second highest foot traffic place in Atlanta is a burden financially. Yeah. But if you go after it like a village, we can do this not just as a single company, but representing many different companies. Yeah. So the reason why people should come here is because we're all things excellent. Yeah. You can get candles from hair products, body products, but most importantly, you get to be a part of somebody's dream. Yeah. You get to give some of the finest products from some of the finest founders in the country right here in Atlanta. So yes, people need to come here, people need to spend their money here, but this is a testament of an incredible pivot, and we continue to grow.
Did you have to gain their trust? Like, did you have to sell them? I mean, I know the Village Market was working, right? But again, you're in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody is scrambling, right? And then we're in this era where everybody can just go directly to consumer, e-commerce as well. Did you have to gain their trust to get their products in?
Because I've been working with entrepreneurs since 2016 and they saw the way the Village Market consistently grew and that we were such a different model, it was beyond creating a marketplace. This was a marketplace that people then window shop and just take selfies. They did that, but they also shopped. Yeah. So entrepreneurs said, all right, if Dr. Key has the audacity to talk about a retail store while the world is shuttered in place, then I'm going to go on this mission and this vision with her. Yeah. But I also didn't overpromise performance. What I said is that it is going to be a beautiful location, that your products would be cared for, that your branding would be seen throughout, and it would be a seamless story of the village. And as people come in, they would get to experience your product. If they walk away and don't buy something, we would make sure that they have a card where they can shop from us online, and they would get their products within 48 hours. So it was a commitment that it was going to be a layered relationship. But I think as a founder, and if you're doing something new, never overpromise of what the outcomes are going to be. Promise of what you can build. And I knew that I could build an excellent model that will lift the elevation of what it meant to be a Black entrepreneur in the city of Atlanta, and how to test that market right here at Ponce City Market. Yeah.
And is Atlanta, is it because it's here that it's working so well? Because again, this is Wakanda, right? This is what people call this place when you come to Atlanta, and the camaraderie is there, right? The cohesiveness is there. Everybody is just connected. There's people I'm coming from Philly, they live down here, and they say, man, it's a special place. Did it have to start here in Atlanta?
I think it's working because of the intentions put behind it and the level of work effort to make sure that it is excellent. There are no corners cut, that we make sure that we are positioned for success and the entrepreneurs are positioned for success. And the backdrop of all of that is that it's built in Atlanta. There's no place in the world like Atlanta to build. So yes, I believe that we're successful because we work hard and we put in the work, but also we're in a very fertile ground like Atlanta to be able to grow.
Yeah, I sort of heard you say before that people can walk in the store and they might leave and not buy. You give them a go. Who can walk in here and not buy anything, right? You gotta buy something, right? It smells so good in here. You want a candle or something like that. But I noticed on your back wall, right? When you walk into those doors, support is a verb. Why that phrase when you walk in? Why do you want people to know that?
I want people to understand what the mission is. I want you to come here and understand that there's a verb attached to it. So either you buy and you take a great picture by the wall and you post it and tell people about the experience, but there's some action that should happen here. Action in buying a product, bringing somebody in with you, leaving us a great review. Y'all check out our reviews, 4.9, we're trying to get to 5, but we're doing extremely well. But beyond a retail space, I center Black entrepreneurship. This is one of the verticals that we have. Across the village businesses, support is a verb, it's in everything that we do. As we think about economic efficacy for Black people, as we think about creating generational wealth, as we think about scaling Black companies, it is going to require some commitments, intentionality, and a whole bunch of verbs. It takes intentional action for us to be able to scale and build. It takes intentional action to make sure funds are created to support businesses. So the verb is our call of action, our charge, that when you say that you are for Black people, Black communities, for Black businesses, I often ask you, then what is your verb like?
Wow. Well, we want to get into your verbs, right? Because you had to learn it at one point. I want to dig into your background, but it's interesting you say that. You know, I always have a stat, McKinsey & Company, right? Their stat that, estimates that, Black collective economic power, is set to expand $1.7 trillion by 2030. That's up from 910 right now. If you think about that, that's the size of Mexico's GDP. When you hear that number, 1.7 trillion, right, that Black economic spending power is set to increase to, what comes to mind? What are you thinking about all that money that's at stake, that's circulating amongst us, that we know goes to other places and not maybe back into Black communities or Black businesses? When you hear that number, right, what's at stake for the village retail, and how do you guys plan on making sure that we can capitalize? And when you say we, Black community can capitalize off of that?
When I hear that number, I hear nothing but opportunity. But I also hear how it's important for us to hear that number and to have a plan in place to make sure that money is circulating within our communities. So it's not just important to be able to have the capacity of what you can do financially. It is what you are actually doing financially. And so I love for us to push models beyond the individual wealth being grown. I want you to do well, Jabari, in life. I want to do well in life. But imagine if we had the level of intentionality that Jabari, as I climb, I lift you. As you climb, you lift me. When I think about all of this money that is being circulated, I want us to figure out what is the collective wealth building model behind that. So it's going to require us to be quite uncomfortable and challenge the status quo. It can't be this model of individualism any longer, because I think that has crippled our community and crippled our mobility. So I hear the number and I get excited because there's opportunity. But I also hear that number and say we need to sit down, strategize, and think about what is collective wealth building and how does that look generationally as Black people. It takes a great deal of intentionality and discipline to not do what's there, but to defy it.
Let's talk a bit about your background, right? You grew up in Mississippi, right, before moving down to Atlanta. What was that like? What's it like growing up in Mississippi?
For me, it felt like love. Right. It feels like my family. Yeah. When I need to retreat from the world, I don't go to a coastal place, whereas I go sometimes. But that is not typically the place I go to. I go to my grandmother's house that sits in the middle of a cotton field in the Mississippi Delta, and it's one of my safest places. So growing up, I remember a great deal of safety. Yeah. I was well loved and well supported by my family and by my community. And also there were pervasive things that was happening in Mississippi and primarily across the South. But what I would tell you, Jabari, I wasn't subjected from those things because I had a blanket of care around me. And so for me, Mississippi continues to be my safe place, my blanket of care. I also see Mississippi as a wide-scale opportunity for entrepreneurship for the work that I'm doing in Atlanta. In the past year, I've been able to take that work to Mississippi and be able to support over 100 entrepreneurs and deploy over $150,000 in grants. So because I'm thinking about the future me, and the me that's there now, that when people are pushing you into those traditional careers, and nothing is wrong with that. I spent many years as an educator, but there's somebody that's creative, they have business ideas. And because that is not ingrained in the culture of what we do, I thought about those entrepreneurs and say, let me make sure as I build in Atlanta, as I build in New York, as we scale in LA, let me make sure my people, folks like me, are being taken care of.
Yeah. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
I always wanted to be an educator.
Okay.
I remember being in 3rd grade and it was career day. Now pause. Why do they ask 3rd graders what they want to be when they grow up? I have no idea.
Because we change all the time.
We change all the time. But I remember saying, I want to be a teacher. And I remember going home and telling my dad, I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up. And my dad said, no, you're not. You're going to be a doctor. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a teacher. And that stayed with me. Yeah. Because what I experienced through my teachers in Mississippi, through K-12, all the way through Tulu College, shout out to my alma mater, I experienced people that expanded the way that I thought. And as they expanded the way that I thought, I knew that there was a different life beyond what I was experiencing in Mississippi. Yeah. And so I wanted to be a part of that. Yeah. I wanted to be a part of the person that I taught at Madison Shannon Palmer High School in the Mississippi Delta. And I told my students when they would come in, and I would give them dap, I would give them hugs. And these are high schoolers. And I would tell them, when you step into this room, you will be transformed. That this is no longer right here in Marks, Mississippi. Every day we chose another place where we were going to be. So one day we're in New York, and that's what our theme was on. And what I was doing is what teachers did for me. I was lifting their vision of what was possible for them and bringing it into the classroom. And so I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but I did want to be an educator. And what's so incredible about life, though I've pivoted from that traditional education world, through Our Village United, I get to teach every single day. Absolutely. I just get to teach differently. Yeah.
What did you teach in high school?
English.
English?
Yes.
Wow, I should have, you could use me. I could still use your help.
I got you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Was it difficult at that? Because when you're high school, you have your attitude, we rebel. We were both high schoolers, right? You're going against it. Was it difficult teaching, or did you find that easy to get to young people?
You know the beautiful thing about purpose, because teaching was a part of one of my life callings, and it was purposeful for me to be a 22-year-old, fresh out of college, teaching high schoolers and pretending that I'm 30, which felt old then, but is young today. Yeah. But I was pretending that I was 30, because many of them were 17 and 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't, if anything was difficult, it was difficult just trying to appear to be older. But no, I absolutely loved it. I've never had an experience where I was so fulfilled every day. Even when the students come in with their high school attitudes or their teenage hormones and all the things, I really felt it was upon my destiny to be a part, to capture them in a safe place without judging a moment that they were in. I always saw it as a moment. Yeah. I will always be able to look at my students as whole people. And so I say, you take your moment, but remember who you are. Remember how you must show up in the world. And I was able to transition so many students in their moments. But no, it didn't challenge me, and it wasn't hard for me, but it challenged me, because just like in entrepreneurship now, I strive to make sure that I'm impeccable in everything that I do. Yeah. So I didn't want to be any teacher. I wanted to be the best teacher. Absolutely. And when 20 years from now and they're thinking about their high school English teacher, my name show up in their mind. Yeah. Absolutely.
But you left, right? Mm-hmm. Was it tough when you left the transition? In 2016, you started the Village Market, right? What was the decision to leave education and go into the corporate and entrepreneurial world?
It was one of the hardest decisions I have ever made.
Did you cry?
I teared up a lot.
Wow.
I teared up a lot because it's beautiful how purpose propels you. But in order to be propelled, you have to let some things go. I was so afraid, Jabari, of the financial security. I was also afraid of, I know I'm good at education. What if I'm not good at this? What if I am abandoning students And I know that I am one of the many intentional teachers that deeply care about their whole educational experience and their trajectory. Am I leaving? Am I leaving an industry that continues to need people who are dedicated? And so I had to grapple with those decisions. But as I was making that decision, and it was a slow progression over time, I had to figure out, could I still be of service? And so what I asked for, and I was writing my little vision and making it plain, what I asked for, please let me still teach. Just allow my classroom to expand. And as I grow in my company scale, because I knew that would happen, give me the capacity in my schedule where I can still serve young people. And what's so beautiful about life and how it's set up, tomorrow, this retail store will be filled with high schoolers. The new school comes and I teach an entrepreneurship class with them, and then they go outside and we set up a beautiful marketplace. And so it feels very much so like the home that I built first in the classroom. Yeah. So Jabari, I've gotten everything that I could have possibly asked for. Yeah. But was it hard? Was it hard to say goodbye to the person I knew meeting me as a teacher and say, well, welcome in Dr. Key, the CEO and founder and entrepreneur? But nobody warned me, Jabari, of the headache of what it meant to own a business. Yeah. It's really attractive on social media, but to be in it every single day, it stretched me more. It has stretched me more than when I was an educator.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, you said it, right? You raised $2,500 from your family and friends and used the savings, right, to kind of launch this. How much savings did you have to use to kind of open this up?
Yes, as I was building the Village Market in 2016, I was then working for the Georgia Department of Education as an education research and evaluation specialist. All that title means I was working with after-school programs to ensure they continue to receive funds. Behind the scenes, I was also working with the Village Market. And so you asked the question before, like, how did you know it was time to go? Village Market took over. I was waking up 3 o'clock in the morning trying to build Village Market, taking my lunch break to take meetings on Village Market, working late at night to build Village Market, and still trying to do this thing full time as well. And so it became imbalanced. But that's also how I knew that I could pivot out of education, because Village Market was really building itself. I just had to have the confidence in leaving what I knew. I had to have the confidence that I could build a company where I make sure that people have health benefits. I could build a company where people could have retirement. I could have a company and create a culture of care in the workplace. It's different to be in the seat of being someone giving you those things to you being in the seat of now you're the one being the giver of those things. That is what I had to shift my mindset of how I could build as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, looking at the business now, we're inside, right? I mean, obviously you go through that pivot, but am I looking at the business where people come in, they deliver their products, right? And it's a natural business contract, they get shelf placement, and you get a percentage of whatever they sell?
Yes, so it's a profit share model. We have some wholesale models as well. So it's a hybrid. Okay. And what we try to do is what's best for the entrepreneur. We've had to learn a lot. When we first opened the retail store, we let everyone know this is a pilot. We're all gonna go on this discovery together. And so what that looked like, the Village Retail took a great deal of the financial burden, because we wanted to make sure, remember, we were opening towards the end of the pandemic, the version of it that we were in. And so we took the huge financial burden of that. And so once we got into the business model a little bit more, maybe a year, we then figured out, okay, this is how we can make sure that we continue to exist. We have to balance this out a little bit more. So that's a profit share model. There's wholesale. We do pop-ups in a store. And I will say, for someone who has aspirations of building a retail store in their city, it is very important, if you're going to bring in a lot of entrepreneurs, is think through what is a win-win. Yeah. What is a win-win for you and the brand? What is a win-win for your company so you can sustain? I think often in the service of doing good, we forget about the business that is needed in the service of doing good. Yeah. If the Village Retail closed, all these businesses close as well. If someone's thinking about opening in their city, they have to figure out how do they build their financial pathway so they can be open 3 to 5 to 10 years later if they so choose. Yeah.
Well, in 2020, right, you said obviously the Village Retail that you guys have circulated over 4.5 million to Black-owned businesses since 2016, since your opening. Any update on that number now that we're in 2024?
Yes, so we've actually circulated under the Village Market and Village Retail $8.3 million. And so how did we get that number? In our Village Market marketplaces, we would keep up with the amount of sales that were circulated during those events. In the Village Retail, same thing. We're looking at our year-end sales, and we've gotten that aggregate number of how we're circulating the dollar within the community and what's going out. And of course, there's greater numbers the way that we hire Black contractors. So when you see this beautiful design, this was designed by a Black woman. If you look at the beautiful plants that's laid out, this is a plant company came from a Black company. And so we're still working on those numbers. The amount of the GC that we hired for this store, that was a young Black man. And so we are very detailed and intentional in how we spend our money. Of course, we want you, Jabari, to come in and buy a lot of candles. We'll calculate that, but we also in the Village make sure that as we're hiring and we're building concepts, that we're hiring Black.
Yeah, I got to buy the beard oil though. I'm gonna try to save the last hair I have left, right? Get the candles later.
You got it.
What's been the biggest positive surprise about being a CEO and running the company? Biggest positive surprise?
Oh, it's so many. It's so many. Personally, not a surprise, but a feeling that I have every single day. It's like, wow, I'm really doing this.
Yeah.
I'm really doing this. And I have an amazing team that's doing this with me. I live in gratitude on that every single day. When I wake up and I'm in my little spiritual bag, thinking about what type of day I'm going to be, I always take a moment to be present in what I've been able to accomplish. And the other surprises, entrepreneurs are doing well. Yeah. When you look around this store, individual companies are doing 6 figures. That is incredible. Considering that it's a shared retail store. Yeah. That means shared space, because I am big on community wealth building, shared space works. That you can do 6 figures and a person next to you can do 6 figures. And collectively a store can do 7 figures. So every day I am thankful. I know that the system can work, that this model can work. And seeing entrepreneurs to see them look at their sales and watch them cry because they remember when it was just them in their homes pressing t-shirts or pouring candles or testing out scents and fragrances. They remember the beginning. They remember popping up at shows, breaking down at shows so they can go to the next city. And now they get to be in a retail store that the only thing that we require of them, Jabari, is make sure that your packaging is together, bring it here on time, and we will do the rest. Yeah. From ensuring that you are positioned correctly in the store to also making sure that customers can buy from you online. That is an amazing setup, but what we do require is that quality in every single product. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I saw back there, FDA approved on some of that. And
absolutely.
I'm like, wow, that is amazing, right? To get the federal government to approve your product and it's in this store, Black-owned woman that owns that product.
Absolutely.
With positives, there are negatives. Yeah. What is the biggest negative surprise? Something that you guys are still having to figure out and learn and get better at?
Absolutely. And so I don't see it as negative, but I do think we've experienced many opportunities for growth and many hard lessons learned.
What was the biggest, hardest lesson or the hardest lesson you had to learn?
Absolutely. In building this retail store, I talked about in the service of doing good, you have to make sure that you can survive yourself. In our first year, we did exceptional. The businesses did exceptional, but the business did not. We were struggling every month because a greater percentage went out. And so what we didn't account for, we accounted for that our vision is to see these entrepreneurs scale, because our vision is for them to outgrow the store so we can put other brands in. And so as we're building that model and making sure that they have what they need, there are other things like overhead that we have to account for. A staff that's here 7 days a week where we're only closed 2 days out of the year, that the packaging, all the things that's required to get things shipped, all of those things and all the fees to be at Ponce City Market, we didn't account for that because the Village Market was a social and is a social enterprise. The Village Retail is a social enterprise, but I had to level up I had to level up my mindset on what it means to be a sustainable company, do good, but have an impeccable business model so you can continue to be here. So I had some tough lessons. I had to be stretched as well as a CEO, that my heart is for every person in this store and all the people that we meet to be successful. My mentors had to say, yes, but how will they be successful if you fail? Yeah. And it was in that leadership that was deployed to me. It helped me really put my head low and think about a business model that could work. Yeah. But that was, out of all the things that I've done, Village Market, Our Village United, and trying to raise grant dollars, the retail store really grew me up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. What do you tell an entrepreneur about pivoting? You've done it plenty of times in your life, from going from education to now where you're doing now, running the Village Retail CEO, and then the pandemic threw you back, right? I mean, that was all pivoting. A lot of entrepreneurs I've run into, they don't want anything to do with pivoting, right? They don't think that they have to, but they'll find out later on they may. What do you talk to them about pivoting, young entrepreneurs especially?
I tell entrepreneurs to welcome pivoting. It truly only makes you better. So let's go back again. In 2019, the only company that I had was Village Market. Village Market was doing great, but because I've had to pivot due to the pandemic, that opened the Village Retail. We support all of these founders now. That opened the gateway for Our Village United, where in the last 2 years, we deployed over $700,000 in grants. Our programming is now in 25 states. But remember, let's go back. In 2019, I only had the Village Market. But that pivot opened the Village Retail. It opened me to even think about sustainability of businesses, to make sure that businesses get technical assistance, grant dollars, all pro bono services. That created my vision for Our Village United in our first program, Elevate. Without that pivot, Jabari, would those things be in existence? We can say maybe, but we can't be for sure, because the pivot is what opened me to think about all that I could do and not what the one thing that I could do. Pivoting also has positioned my astuteness as an entrepreneur. You have to go through things in your business to think of more creative ways to do things, how to tighten up your standard operating procedures, your SOPs. You need to understand your numbers. So if your numbers begin to tank, you need to understand why. You need to understand your profit margins. All of those things in a good pivot you will learn. What I've also tell entrepreneurs, the reason why the pivot is worth embracing is because you don't lose the things that you were before either. You just have an opportunity to grow and tighten and strengthen yourself even more. So I welcome a good pivot. It continues to open me. It continues to position me for greater opportunities to advance entrepreneurs and Black entrepreneurs. Without those, remember, in 2019, I only had the Village Market.
Yeah. Macroeconomic things, right, before we get you out of here. State of retail in 2024, right? We're midway point in the year. What are you seeing? If there's an entrepreneur out there in retail, maybe not in the Village Market, not yet, right? Not in the Village Retail, but they may be. But what are you looking at when it comes to state of retail in 2024? What's concerning you?
I think it's not the state of retail that concerns me. It's the state of lease agreements that concern me. You have to have a good real estate broker. You have to have a really great attorney before you sign these lease agreements. If it's a new development and they give you 6 months of free rent, you need to understand what is the 6 months that follow. What are you signing up for that sounds so tantalizing at first? You need to know what the end deal, and if that's a triple net lease, can you really broker this expense if the sales don't come in? Yeah. And so retail, I'm confident. Consumers are going to buy, but I am cautious as new developments open up in the city of Atlanta, across America. I want to make sure that future Black retailers arm themselves with an army of efficient people, skilled people to negotiate great deals. And I believe in our community, we should position ourselves of what we have the opportunity to build and bring that community. I knew by opening at Ponce City Market was great. Ponce City Market is better because we're here. I want entrepreneurs to lead with that mentality and mindset as well. What is the value that you bring, not just the value that what you believe that developers bring you.
Absolutely. Commercial real estate right now in a very tough period, so a lot of good deals out there, but as you said, maybe be careful before signing things because those fine details in there that they can get you. Any update 2024 for Village Retail, right? Are you expanding, or are we going to see more outside of Atlanta, maybe a Village Retail in New York or Jersey or where I'm from in Philadelphia? I mean, where are we going with this? Because I would love to see it pop up everywhere.
We are working on our second location. I cannot disclose where, but we are working on our second location.
Out of Georgia?
Out of Georgia, and it wouldn't open until 2025.
Okay, in 2025.
Yeah.
Mississippi, babe, take it back to your home.
We wouldn't open Village Retail in Mississippi, but we're going to do some cool things in Mississippi.
That's great.
But this fall, we're actually opening the bookstore, so the Village Books. So that's going to be the second brand under the Village Retail. And we have other exciting things that I can't share at the moment.
Well, make sure you share them when it's time, right? I want the exclusive too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And a perfect segue, right? Book, right? We are in summer, spring, summer, getting warm. Give that entrepreneur Dr. Key's favorite leadership book. What does she read? And she can go back to it time and time again and pick up something new. For me, it's Jim Collins, Good to Great. I'll get to that in a minute. But what's your favorite book that maybe somebody should pick up?
One of my favorite entrepreneurial books is Who Not How. Phenomenal book. I can't remember who it's by, which is terrible, but Who Not How teaches a founder how to let go and delegate. That is one of the hardest things in entrepreneurship, to trust people to come into your baby and to actually give something away. But if we build people well, if we train people well, the who would be more powerful than you always being the one that's doing everything.
And again, 2024, we're getting into it's an election year, right? Without choosing sides, as a CEO, right? What do you want to hear? What do you want to see from the candidates?
Yes, I'm deeply civically engaged. I believe all entrepreneurs should be.
Yes.
What I expect from elected officials is to center local small businesses. We're the lifeline in every community and every rural town.
Yes.
And so as the big vision picture of how great America can be, what we should also ask as founders and entrepreneurs and small business owners, how does that flow to me? What legislation is in place? What bills are going to be authored to ensure the protection of small businesses? And I would push even further to secure the protection of Black businesses, from government contracts to ensuring that the SBA is positioned to continue to deliver and deploy dollars. We should be at as many city council meetings as possible, because local politics is just as important as federal. I want us as founders, as entrepreneurs, as small business owners to know that our position in the fight, we have to push, we vote, and we show up and make sure that they deliver.
Absolutely. Get you out of here on this, right? Good to Great. Again, Jim Collins, my favorite business book he wrote. What's the difference between a good Black business and a great one?
I think the greatness for any entrepreneur, free of and void of ethnicity, greatness, number one, is in the intention of what you are building. And the vision that you have in your mind, is that the experience? That takes a deep level of reflection. How is your customer service experience? What is the quality of your products and your packaging? What is your delivery time? How do you respond to not so positive reviews? How do you show up in community for those civically engaging events? How do you pour back into the community that supports you? That is excellence, and it requires a holistic approach. It's not just about scaling to 7, 8, 9 figures. We want that. But if you're scaling and only your family is doing well, and you're not pouring anything back into the community, that is a singular success, and that is not going to propel our people forward.
Absolutely. Dr. Key, I appreciate the education. Thank you so much for the time, and we'll hope to see you at the Forbes BOK Summit in June. And your home's right here. This is the town you in, not your hometown, but the town you're in, so I hope to see you there. And again, thank you so much for the time. This is such a beautiful store, and I definitely, and I'm sure people will too, support you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at the summit.
Behind every great story of business success, there is one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, or even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had legendary investor Benjamin Graham. And Silvia Battilana has Nobel laureate Paul Milgrom. Today, Silvia is the CEO and co-founder at Auctionomics, a high-stakes auction technology company that uses game theory to solve complex business problems. She says none of this would have happened had she not taken class with Paul at Stanford. She found that Paul wanted all of his students to ask questions, and he encouraged Silvia to share with him her perspective on economics and game theory. Eventually, these conversations convinced Paul to take a bet on a young student who'd showed a whole lot of initiative, and this one decision changed the rest of her career. Silvia Battilana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are here for a series called The One Who Changed Everything. And
Yes.
you currently run a company that runs multi-billion-dollar auctions. You have your PhD in economics, but you say there's one person without whom you wouldn't be sitting in this seat. Who is that person?
100%. Thank you for asking that question, so I get to say thank you. That person is definitely my co-founder, Nobel laureate, Paul Milgrom. Paul completely changed my life. First of all, I come from Italy. I immigrated to the United States to do my PhD. And in Italy, the professor speaks, you listen. I am at Stanford and I meet Paul Milgrom, who is a genius, and he expects he can learn from anyone. So that shaped the whole company. We believe everybody can contribute, everybody can be a leader. And Paul has just been fantastic, empowering me from day one to be the co-founder of his company. When the Treasury asked him, I have trillions of dollars of distressed assets to sell in the mortgage-backed security crisis, and he needed a co-founder, he picked a PhD student, me, invited me for coffee at Coupa Cafe, like the Facebook movie, Coupa Cafe, and says, will you be my co-founder? So having a mentor and a co-founder that is a genius, empowers you, believes in you, and builds a company around trust has changed my whole career.
Interesting. Take me back to the first time in his class. So you're expecting a professor to just talk and talk and talk and absorb. What was your first impression of Paul?
Well, every time you would ask a question, he would ponder it seriously and answer, but in a way that was not like, oh, I'm annoyed you're asking a question. But it was like, he would tell me after class, thank you for asking questions. Like for him, a question is a learning experience. He expects to learn even from the plumber. He's a genius.
You call Paul a genius. He is a Nobel laureate in economics.
Yes.
For folks who aren't familiar with his background, can you give us the 30-second summary of who he is and what makes him so impressive?
Yes, so Paul won the Nobel in market design during the pandemic. Market design is a little secret you don't know what affects your everyday life. For example, when you use your phone and you are streaming or even calling somebody, that uses bandwidth, which is sold by auction because my co-founder said so 30 years ago. When you are maybe dying and like you need that organ, the matching of organs is done through market design. When you are delayed on a flight that is just going over and over and over and not landing at an airport, airport landing slots can be solved through market design. So market design is auctions on steroids. Auctions on both sides, matched not only by money, but also qualitative attributes. And it's everywhere, you just don't know it.
Interesting. And when you went to pursue your own PhD in economics, were you interested in market design or did you have a different end goal?
So when I was doing my PhD in economics, I had two companies on my own. I didn't want to TA, so I was an entrepreneur already. And so I had one company that was in events and a different company that was doing law school admission test preparation. So I was entrepreneurial. I was doing game theory, so I had a background, but I was not working in auctions. But when the Treasury called Paul, he already had previous business partners who were male, very experienced, many years, but they didn't have initiative. And so he knew me as a student, and we had worked together on a project recruiting students for the university. So he decided to bet on somebody young with a lot of initiative that was thinking out of the box. So that was his bet. And it was scary at first because I wasn't trained in auctions. I wasn't trained as a CEO, but he bet, that's part of Paul. He bets on the young and creative, and it has been an amazing partnership since 2008.
And let's talk about the company that you're building together. What is it? I said at the beginning of this conversation, you run multi-billion-dollar auctions.
Yes.
How exactly do you do that?
Yes, well, first, maybe I would like to also explain to our public what an auction is, because I think if you think about an auction, you think about an art auction.
Yes.
So there is a single item and people bid, and it's all about bringing the right people in the room. But let's build up on that example. Let's suppose now that instead of just having one painting, you are a gazillionaire and you want the whole Van Gogh collection. My grandma had one particular painting of that collection. And so I really want that one painting. And then I want to have 4 Monet paintings. This gentleman in our audience, he wants a mix of some Monet, some Van Goghs, and some other paintings. And now the auctioneer needs to decide how to allocate all of those things. And it's like allocating a puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle, but I cannot overlap pieces. I cannot sell that Van Gogh painting that my grandma had bought to you, and you want the whole collection, and to me, who wants that specific painting. So I need to start using mathematical, I need to be combinatorial, I need to do math, I need to do computer science. So when it gets complicated enough to have those things where there is, you need mathematical solutions, you need computer science, that's when we come in. If it's complex auctions with multi-billion dollars at stake. Because if it's just one item, it's about bringing the right bidders in the room. If you have several items, it gets more complex, and that's where we come in. One big example was the incentive auction, which was a $19 billion auction to give 5G to Americans. So the Federal Communications Commission was our client. We designed that whole auction, and that's an example of high-stakes auctions. So we either design the auction, or we help a bidder bid in an auction, and that's like 007 on steroids, like fingerprints, one door, the door opens, you enter, it closes, fingerprints to the second door, you're in a bunker under earth. That's the second thing, advising bidder how to bid in an auction. Or they ask us, after the auction has happened, to look at the auction and say, was there any foul play? Please give a judgment. And yesterday it became public, for example, that Paul Milgrom, my co-founder, was the leading expert witness in the Google DOJ trial.
Interesting. So you just mentioned the FCC $19 billion auction. Do you mostly work with government? And if not, who are your primary clients when you are doing this work?
Yes, so our clients are either governments or privates. For example, there was the auction after that netted 80 billion, and that was satellite companies, SES, Intelsat and such, that cleared up their C-band to also sell it to the AT&T and Verizon of the world. So we started out with them as private. It was going to be a private auction. Then it actually ended up becoming a government auction, but originally that was private. It was going to be a private auction. So it can be either private companies or governments. There needs to be a lot of stake to call us, because otherwise you don't call us.
Interesting. Now, your work also won you an Emmy Award. And I traditionally think of Emmys for television work. So how does this technology win an Emmy Award?
Yeah, we were very excited about that, because it's like, okay, nerds can be cool. Because we won the Emmy for forever changing the way television is consumed. So remember back in the day, for those who remember, you would sit on the couch and flip through channels. Now, instead, most people do streaming. And that's because of the $19 billion incentive auction you mentioned before. So what happened was that roughly 7 years ago, television stations, including mom and pop's television stations, owned radio spectrum, which is the invisible highways in the sky where you transmit the data on your phone. They owned good frequencies, but the technology had changed. So it wasn't as the television technology had changed, so it wasn't as valuable to them. The government wanted to use that spectrum for the AT&T and Verizon of the world. The government could have just put a law in place that says, I'm taking it back. That would have been lawsuits forever. The government could have just bought it back, but it didn't have 20 billion in their pockets to just buy it back. So we had to run an auction in which We didn't know how much we could buy from the television stations. We didn't know how much money we would get from the AT&T and Verizon. So we had to figure out both sides of the equation. And in addition, there was 1.2 million interference constraints. So we have to solve all this mathematical complexity, but yet I had to make sure that the mom and pops, or we had to make sure at Auctionomics, the mom and pops television stations that own the television station would find this auction simple enough to bid and trust it. So as an Italian, I will say, it's just like a Ferrari. It had to look simple and elegant on the front end with all the complexity and engineering under the hood. And so it was a complex auction. The auctioneering team did a fantastic work. A lot of computer scientists, machine learning, and math was involved. And that's why they gave us an Emmy for forever changing the way television is consumed. You're no longer flipping channels, but you are watching mainly through streaming, partly thanks to that auction, and that's also what was written in the Nobel Award for Paul Milgrom.
Fascinating. So you are effectively operating behind the scenes of some of the biggest deals and some of the biggest consumer behavior in the world. But do you think most consumers know who you are?
They don't. So we're very grateful to people like you who are explaining that the little secret, market design, is an everyday life of everybody. People just don't know it. It's like the invisible hand behind on steroids.
The invisible hand. And you've also used your math and technology to work on water scarcity. Can you talk about how this product, how this company translates to that issue?
Yes. So again, going back to your question of the one, Paul Milgrom wins a Nobel, so he doesn't think I'm going to retire. He thinks I need to do one more big thing, solve water scarcity. And so it's true that there's not enough water, but it's also true that it's a problem of incentives, going back to this game theory. So farmers have a use it or lose it right. So what does that mean? They come to the last day of the yearly allocation. If they still have rights left, what's the incentive? To save water? No, they will flood the fields. So if instead you did something similar to what we did in incentive auction, rather than just passing legislation that says we are reducing your right, they say, no, I let you keep that right, but I give you the authority to monetize it. Then you have an incentive to use water more efficiently and make money from the water you don't use and be able to trade it. Just like the incentive auction and the mom and pops that had the television stations, these are farmers. So it needs to be simple and elegant on the front end. Just like in the incentive auction where we had 1.2 million constraints, there is complexity under the hood. You have a river, you have a farmer up here, they farm, they use water, 20% of the water goes back in the river, and 5 towns down you can use that again. If instead they use that water to truck it to a jeans factory, that water is gone. Farmer down here has a damage. That needs to be handled under the hood, like in the elegant Ferrari. So it's similar to the incentive auction, where there's all this mathematical complexity under the hood, but it needs to be a clean and simple design on the front end.
Now, you mentioned you had 2 companies already when you went to pursue your PhD in economics. Has Paul ever told you what it was about you in class specifically that made him take you out for coffee? Was it a question you asked? Was it a conversation you had in office hours? Yes. How did that relationship develop?
Yes, so I will tell it with his words. So let's pretend that I'm Paul, because he tells this story to people and it always cracks me up. So when we worked together for the student flyout at Stanford, so for attracting the top PhD students that were selected. So the department tasked him and he asked me if I could help. He said, Silvia came to my office. She had all these ideas. And I was like, that's just impossible. And then she implemented them all spotlessly. She was like, we do this, 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 and this. And then she did it all. And we got all of our top students. And it was all super efficient. And she had this energy and it was applied everywhere. And so he was very impressed because it was a huge success. But also it was like all this out-of-the-box initiative. And so he observed that. And then when it came time to potentially sell $1 trillion distressed assets for the treasury, he thought of me and remembered that plan together. So there is somebody I can bet on.
Where do you think your career would be had you not met Paul, had you not taken his class?
You know, I live in the flow. I don't know. But I have always, in elementary school, there was we had to write an assignment. And the assignment was me and money. And I wrote this write-up where I was saying that I was going to be a successful entrepreneur and I was going to do this and that. And like the teacher was like, "This is just crazy. Your daughter has a problem," she said to me. Like, so my sister had kept that. And so I always thought I was going to do big things. That is, that I was always a little bit reckless, and I always had that belief. So I'm sure it would have been fine, but it has certainly been a blessing to work with Paul, and I wouldn't have it any way different.
You say reckless. I don't know. I think it's imaginative and ambitious.
Yes. So it's like everything will be fine. I believe it.
Everything will be fine. What's your advice for people who feel like they have not met the one who's changed everything for them, who haven't met their Paul?
I think for people in general, but especially I think for women who pursue certain careers that might have challenges on the way, I think my advice in general is, yes, they could be the one, but also very important, if they are women in a male-dominated world, to look for male mentors that will support them. And potentially, the one will be among those. So alliances are very important.
Alliances are important, but you say male mentor. Why specifically a male mentor?
So I have said male mentor if it's a male-dominated field. It could very well be a woman mentor. But in a male-dominated field, there might not be a woman available. So in my world, usually in those multi-billion dollars negotiations, there are no other women. So if there were some, they could be my mentors. But I have found, like, in a room full of only men, where I see a woman and like, oh, hooray, and instead she's bringing the coffee, then it has to be a male just because there's no other option. But I have found, so in a male-dominated field, I have found that there are definitely those men who will be there by your side, and those have been the best allies. And Paul is definitely one of those male who are fine with strong female personalities, and one of the immediate big pluses of Paul was his marriage to Eva, who is a very strong Nordic female, and I was like, okay, he can be fine with a strong female leadership style. And I look for that also in some of the male employees. If I see they change their path, or they tell me in the interview, yes, I'm here because I followed my girlfriend to medical school, that's immediately a plus. It's like, wait, they'll be fine with female leadership.
That's interesting. It is consistent with something I've heard from other female CEOs, that it is a male sponsor that helped open their eyes to the possibilities in their career, or who perhaps assigned them to a stretch assignment, if you will, and that opened their eyes to all that they could accomplish.
Yes. And as a mother of two females, so my daughters Adria and Jada, they're 8 and 10, I firmly believe that exposing them to also playing rough with other boys and like being exposed to like not just girls but also boys is very important. So during the pandemic, I put them in this mountain cross-country running team in Italy, where the mountain boys play very rough and you get made fun of if you get second place in a race. So I think both being exposed to all genders from a young age, and also learning how to lose and get back up, rather than this always like, you're always a winner. Like, no, you need to learn how to lose, you need to learn how to make mistakes and get back up. Is what you do when you get back up that matters in your career. And so I think that is something very important to me. And so like, yes, have the one who will help you through also getting up from failures.
What's next for you? What are your own personal goals?
Now, I would definitely say that building this one out is one. And then, well, personally, I'm passionate about beach volleyball, and that is my executive coaching. Because I, like in like June and July, for example, I was training up to 30 hours per week, if we include weekends. I was training with an Olympian, Lauren Fendricks. I'm playing with a Stanford varsity player, Avi Vetter. I'm participating in all those tournaments against 20-year-old varsity players. And so there, it's all about the mental focus, because everybody is like very young, very fit. They are like super competitive. And in order to play at that level, it's all about like mental strength, and also being sure that you have a good relationship with your beach volleyball partner, that you stay strong, that when you make a mistake, you don't let them see that you might be cracking inside, and you stay positive, and you help them when they make a mistake. So those whole dynamics, where if you are not exactly 100% focused, then the ball goes on the other side. all those interactions is what prepares me for multi-billion dollars negotiations, because nothing will be as scary as competing with these 20-year-old varsity players.
Have you played Paul in beach volleyball?
Have I played Paul?
Yeah.
My co-founder?
Yes.
No. Oh, actually, yes. Actually, yes. We had a team outing where we got a sailing boat and we set up a net and everybody played.
Team building exercise.
Yes, we did. I have.
We've talked about so many aspects of how you've built Auctionomics and where you came from. Is there anything else about your entrepreneurial journey that our Forbes audience should know?
I think generally speaking, sometimes it's an advantage to not have a formal training, which is kind of the Silicon Valley motto. So I did not do an MBA. I did not have any formal business training. And so when I built the company as a CEO, I was thinking out of the box a lot. And I think that ended up being an advantage rather than a downside.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't even think about that, because having a PhD in economics sounds pretty hard. But did you feel like an outsider in your earlier career?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, like when we started out, there was no one, and there still to this day is no one at Auctionomics that has an MBA. There's no one that had business experience. So I had to make it up as I went.
Silvia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I was in New York City, but I lived in Jersey. And when I went home into Jersey and I popped into a local liquor store, I realized that that same bottle that I was seeing on a liquor store shelf in Manhattan for $300 was $150 in Jersey. And I was like, wait a second, there's a real disconnect here if I can drive over a bridge and pay half the price. Whiskey and alcohol distribution in general is really, really siloed, state by state, country by country, and there's no transparency in the market to figure out what you should be paying, what the real market price is, and what other people are willing to pay for bottles that they can't get their hands on. So Baxis really came to be as a way to bridge that gap, to create transparency in the market and access so people anywhere in the world could buy and trade bottles that they might not have readily available to them. Baxis is a secure vaulting platform and marketplace. And so what that means is people send us their personal collections. And these are bottles that could be new releases, and these are bottles that in some cases are from the 1800s and early 1900s. We provide temperature-controlled insured storage and vaulting solutions. And then those bottles go into their account. So users access a dashboard where they can see the bottles that they have in their account, interesting information about the bottles, historical information. And then the most important part for a lot of them is that they can actually track the prices. And so we provide all of the auction data, secondary pricing data that we can gather in a chart for them to track the values and then allow them to list their bottles for sale directly. What we found, and kind of our little joke, but our real growth hack is not going to the whiskey collectors, but we go to their significant others and we're like, hey, so what if you could get free storage and insurance for all of the stuff taking up your house? And 2 days later, we get a call, my wife would like these 300 bottles out of my house by tomorrow. For anyone looking for, a growth hack in the collectible space, let me tell you, go to the spouses, not the collectors. One of the issues with auction houses, which I've used in the past, is you'll send in your bottles, it'll take a couple of weeks, then they run the auction for a couple of weeks, then it takes them a couple of weeks to collect the funds, and by the time they're done with everything, it's 2-3 months between when you sent in your bottle and when you get paid. And that drives a lot of people to gray markets that exist, private groups where there's a lot of fraud because you don't have that layer of security. And so what we wanted to do was create that instantaneity of it, allow you to buy more things, allow you to sell more things. We do a 360-degree scan of every bottle at Baxis, and the reason for this is multifold. One is the authentication process and being able to run computer vision models to double check on the authenticity. But the other one is that when you're buying something rare and collectible, the condition matters. Trading cards get sent to PSA or CGC for grading. That doesn't exist for whiskey. So I want to make sure, is the label in pristine condition? Is it ripped? Is the tack strip torn? How does the liquid look inside? So all of that is really important to the buyer. And even when you're using websites or liquor store websites, they're usually using stock images. And so you don't know if you're getting the exact bottle that they're telling you about. Sometimes they might even get the addition or something wrong because the store owner doesn't know. And most brands actually reuse UPC codes. So you'll actually scan a barcode and it'll come up as the exact same as last year's edition. They don't change it for year to year, so a guy who works in the store doesn't even know. When we first launched, NFTs were at their absolute height. So people are talking Bored Apes and JPEGs and all that, and we're like, guys, this is great technology, but like you're missing what it can be used for. What was really important for us with Baxis was building both for the future as well as the interoperability that blockchain provided and the security. So when you trade someone a token, they own that bottle now and they can redeem and ship that bottle. And if you're a blockchain user, if you're in Web3, if you understand it, there are so many things you can do. The other day, somebody traded a bottle of whiskey that was stored in Baxis's vault, because they're all tokenized, for a Magic the Gathering card that was tokenized in somebody else's vault. That's what this unlocks, is that in the future, all of these different blockchain protocols can now fit in with your whiskey collection. No one cares about what web services platform Netflix is hosted on. They care that they can click a button and watch a movie. Our users are not going to care how we build it, they just care that it works. Our core user, the people that we really wanted to appeal to, was whiskey lovers, was collectors, and not just whiskey, but spirits and wine in general. And so we need to bring it to where they were at. And for most of them, they're familiar and they're comfortable with a website. They can log in with an email, they can pay with a credit card. And so all of those are things that we put really at the forefront of Baxis. You can use crypto if you want to, but you don't have to know anything about it. I had built and run small businesses that I had built up, but it's very different than trying to build a venture-grade enterprise. So it was tough at the beginning to get kind of that interest, I would say, even from like VCs, where like they understood the idea of like what they're calling real-world assets or RWAs, but they didn't know much about the whiskey markets or the spirits markets or the wine market and understand how large they were. We kind of had this opportunity to try and fail a lot, at a small scale, leading into the end of 2022 when FTX collapsed, and we were like, no, we're like heads down focused on building for the whiskey community, building for the spirits community. And so that bear market didn't really affect us. If anything, it made us stronger, because when it started to ease up, people are like, wait, these guys are still around. 2023, when we launched the marketplace, we started to get that momentum. We expected people would send in a couple of bottles here and there, but we started to get real collections. We had a substantial amount of trading going on. Whiskey collectors were raving about the platform because they're like, wait, these are bottles I've been looking for. It's an ability for me to sell. And that really took off and caught some VC attention. And so we ended up raising our seed round and really just been scaling ever since. The nice thing about SaaS companies is, as long as you have a computer and an internet connection, you can run your company. For us, we need physical space to store the bottles. So we are opening actually our second vault now in Jersey. We're going to be opening a couple more in the US at the end of this year, and then one overseas, our first overseas vault, and scaling both the physical infrastructure globally to add more users, as well as the engineering support on the back end to be able to really deliver, features and products to those users. There's this disconnect between brands and consumers. A distillery will sell their bottles to a distributor who sells their bottles to a liquor store who sells their bottles to you, who sells the bottles to me, who sells the bottles to someone else. And so by the time it gets to the end consumer, the brand has no idea who their biggest fans actually are. We can say there is an account that has 50 of your bottles. And so being able to connect and show brands, first of all, here's how you can really connect with your consumers, which we've already done with a couple of brands, and they've loved it because we did a private barrel pick down at Wild Turkey. And so we went into the database and we found the two largest collectors of single barrel Russell's Reserves, like Wild Turkey's product. And we brought two users down who have each of them over 50 or 60 bottles of like single barrel Russell's Reserve. And they had never met anyone from the brand. They loved the product, they loved the brand, and they got to pick that barrel with us themselves with Bruce Russell, and like they were huge fans before, but now they're lifelong fans. And that's really special also because there is such a social and a nostalgia element tied into whiskey and into spirits. It's what did you see your dad drinking? What did you see your grandfather drinking? What was your mother drinking? And so that kind of shapes the way that people perceive alcohol. And so building those like real connections and not just making people think of them as large companies is really cool and really special, because the people who work in the distilleries and in the brands really care. They're really passionate. What's cool about the blockchain element is because each of the bottles is scanned, and this was something else that really motivated me, and it lives permanently on the blockchain, we now have this digital encyclopedia and this digital archive, because the thing about whiskey is it's so finite. So a single barrel, an old release, once they're gone, they're gone. They're gone from the face of the earth. They can never recreate the 1976 Jack Daniels, which might have just been to most people a regular Jack Daniels in the 70s, but now sells for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, because there are just so few of them left, and the whiskey is genuinely different. And so, yes, it's sad to see them go, but it's also great knowing that they're actually getting consumed, because as a whiskey lover, like I want to sit around with my friends and my family and enjoy like a little piece of history. And so it makes me happy knowing that somebody's doing that, but it makes me happier knowing that even if those bottles vanish off the face of the earth, that there will be a permanent digital archive so that if somebody does stumble across one of these bottles in 50 or 100 years from now, all of the information that they'll need will be stored on-chain because of access.
The American toilet paper market is an $11 billion industry, but using dry paper to clean up during a bathroom visit may become a thing of the past if the dudes at Dude Wipes have anything to say about it.
We knew no one had ever made wipes for guys. We knew no one was really making flushable wipes. We knew the toilet paper space in general had never even said the word butt or poop before. So we just saw this whole thing as so stale and so dry and crusty that we could get in there with our fun and our clean wet wipes and make a splash.
The Chicago-based creators of Dude Wipes sold $110 million worth of flushable wipes last year, making up 1% of the entire toilet paper industry. They first gained overnight fame after an appearance on Shark Tank in 2015.
Sharks, are you still wiping the old-fashioned way with just toilet paper? If so, you're a chump and your ass hates you for it.
But they actually started their journey 4 years before their trip to the tank.
We were just hanging out every weekend doing the post-college thing, dreaming big and trying to figure out what was next. And I bought a bunch of baby wipes for the apartment at the time, stocked the bathroom. Everybody was kind of getting hooked on them. And we kind of said, well, wait a minute here. Why are these only for babies? Maybe there should be something for dudes. Maybe there could be a better brand, a better product here.
Wet wipes weren't themselves a novel idea, but in 2011, most were not geared towards adults.
Dude wipes are extra large, flushable wipes. So ours are meant to go down the toilet, disperse and flush. Unlike baby wipes, you're not supposed to flush those. And unlike toilet paper, we actually get the whole job done. So how crazy is this? This is the original Dude Wipes prototype. So when you talk about bootstrapping and grinding and just making it happen, this was our idea, and we just had a white box that we started getting from the manufacturer. You can see we scribbled the logo in on pencil here. And so always hold on to this, because this shows you really what you can get done if you put your mind to it, and that everybody has to start somewhere. So every long journey starts with one wipe, and this is where our long journey started.
This wasn't a group of guys with a history in toilet paper, but they were lifelong friends.
So me and the dudes, Jeff and Ryan, have known each other since high school and even grade school. So we kind of met growing up, playing sports together. Then we all went off to college, did our thing.
They all moved in together after graduating from different colleges and were all working 9-to-5 jobs in Chicago. Riley in sales for a construction tech firm, Megan in marketing, and Klimkowski as an investment banker.
We had all these different backgrounds. What we really shared in common was like a fun, loving spirit and wanting to do something entrepreneurial.
Let me tell you, the three of them are extremely amazing guys. They really know their shit. No pun intended, okay? He's the chief salesman and he's the CEO. And, I've noticed good CEOs can transition from one topic to another seamlessly. This guy does that well. Jeff knows all the numbers. Intuitively, he understands everything about the business that's going on. And Ryan is extremely creative on the marketing front. So the three of them have complementary skills that really work.
After their light bulb moment with the white box, the dudes got into action, investing $30,000 to get their idea off the ground.
We put our heads together, we bootstrapped, we scraped and clawed to find a manufacturer, make a really cool brand that we thought just talked like us, like regular people would talk. And we were never scared to take a chance and put our money down and buy these Dude Wipes. Even though we didn't know how to sell them, we didn't know how to do anything. You have to start with that mentality where you should be afraid not to do it. That you look back on your life and say, oh, well, why didn't I take that risk or try to do something there? So that's how you got to flip your mindset in the beginning. It's not the fear of what goes wrong. It's the fear of doing nothing and looking back and say, why didn't we do something? So scared money don't make no money.
Once you get them focused on something, they really attack it.
We were actually just selling product out of the trunk of our car, or we would go to a college orientation and hand out product and try and sell them to frat houses. And so it was literally that like hand to mouth, boots on the ground stuff in the beginning, and then we started selling them more online.
In addition to handing out samples at frat houses, they found success in subscription boxes and selling on Amazon. From the beginning, they always knew who they were and what they were selling.
All along the way, you're gonna have people trying to water down your brand, make it a little tamer. You're gonna have people trying to water down your culture, make it more bureaucratic. And you know, there is certain ebbs and flows and balances of as you grow, but what you really can't do is lose all of that magic.
That dudeness doesn't mean just male. These guys will be the first ones to tell you anybody can be a dude. We did some research recently that showed that maybe about over a third of our users are women. More than that are actually the buyers. They're buying it for the men in their household.
Dude built their brand to be the opposite of the toilet paper giants that long dominated the industry. Instead of avoiding messy bathroom topics, they leaned into them.
They had done some videos, some absolutely nasty, if you ask me, videos that were online. I watched them and I was like, oh God, no. Okay, there's no taste here. But they were funny, and you know, they had gotten them to where they were, and that was great.
So we weren't afraid to say what this product was for. We always say the dudeness is the magic. So our dudeness is that we will talk to you just like a normal human being. We will say poop, we will say butt, we will say this cleans better than toilet paper. We will say all these things that big toilet paper is afraid to say.
There's a lot of different brands that some have benefit superiority, some have reason why superiority, some have brand character superiority. Like you buy Old Spice because of the character of the brand. This brand is very much like that. You buy it because of the dudeness.
It may not have been for everyone, but the Dude's method hit home for many. They landed their first major deal with Kroger in 2015.
We got invited down to Cincinnati and we got to pitch Dude Wipes to a national toilet paper buyer. And he was kind of a cowboy. He was kind of a toilet paper cowboy. He looked at us and he said, you know what, this is interesting, guys. I'm gonna take a chance on you and don't screw it up. We really took that to heart. He was making about a $2 million bet on Dude Wipes. He was gonna launch them nationwide, put one of our products on the shelf, and that was just huge for us. We had to figure out how to make that many Dude Wipes, how to distribute them to Kroger distribution centers, all of that stuff.
It was truly a breakthrough moment. In that same year, they finally landed a spot on the hit business show Shark Tank.
We tried out 3 times, 3 years in a row. So third time was the charm for Shark Tank. We emailed our update over again. Now we had just launched in Kroger, so the business was starting to gain some real traction. We were kind of that perfect size for Shark Tank. Like, we hadn't made our first million yet, but we had proven out some product market fit. We were kind of well on the way. And so, boom, we got the invite to LA.
300K, 25%. Yeah. I'm tired of this. Let's go.
Mark Cuban cut them a $300,000 check for 25% of the business, and they've become one of the most successful businesses to ever appear on the show.
We closed the deal with Mark after the show, and he's been our only investor ever since that we've been able to grow with and be a huge mentor for the business and also a big spokesperson for Dude Wipes to help promote Dude Wipes.
Now that's fresh.
The Shark Tank effect was almost immediate. Sales jumped tenfold to $3 million in 2016. They were able to leverage the momentum from the show for a trial in 1,500 Walmart stores in 2018.
Walmart's a big deal. We know there's a lot of Walmarts, but really, if you could be successful in Walmart, you're kind of part of the American brand lexicon, right? Like, you can apply to people at any price, anywhere around the country, and now your brand is expected to be there.
Today, sales in Walmart stores and on Walmart.com make up about 15% of Dude's total revenue, with retail comprising about half of Dude's overall sales. Its biggest channel is Amazon, which makes up 38% of revenues.
The retailers are looking for productivity in that paper aisle. They got these big, bulky things that take up a heck of a lot of space, and they need to make sure that they're turning the dollars there. As a result, wipes are a wonderful item for them to add to their offering to consumers.
Another key moment for Dude was when COVID struck and toilet paper aisles across the country emptied at an alarming rate.
So all of a sudden retailers are saying, we'll take as many Dude wipes as you can make. We're selling out on Amazon. We're doing millions per week. And it's just crazy business. And we tripled our manufacturing capacity overnight and just started pumping out as many Dude wipes as we could. Making them here in the USA allowed us to make them and get them out to people super quick. So we were able to capitalize on the shortage of toilet paper and really come in and serve people in a time where maybe their moods were down.
From there, an interesting trend began to emerge. 75% of customers who bought wet wipes for the first time during the pandemic went back to buy the products again, according to Dude's own studies of consumer data.
It wasn't just that we were out of toilet paper, so we bought Dude wipes. It was, well, we were out of toilet paper, we tried Dude wipes, now we really like them, and we're gonna keep buying them.
Data from Nielsen Analytics shows the overall category has grown in size by 35% since 2020, compared to 5% growth in dry toilet paper during the same period. Part of that is because of the sheer size of the dry toilet paper industry, which did $9.9 billion in sales in 2020 versus $530 million for wet toilet paper. Dude Wipes has made up more than 40% of this category growth.
It was almost like a big awareness moment for our brand and for wipes in general that, hey, you should try these. And we were able to, serve the customer and grow from there.
But there is the possibility that other giants in the toilet paper industry, like Kimberly-Clark's Cottonelle, will move to stamp out Dude's success with their own wet wipes.
So when you do something interesting and unique, there's going to be knockoffs and followers and all of those things. And really that means you've created a category where other people think they can draft off it. But comes back to, if you ain't first, you're last. So anybody trying to do the same thing as we're doing, they're running a fool's errand. They're in a loser's position.
Cottonelle is one of our biggest competitors. In some of our mass outlets, we have overtaken Cottonelle recently. So we are becoming the #1 brand in several retailers. Dude Wipes has embarked on their first mass media campaign. Our marketing goal is reach as many people as possible with our superior cleaning message. And we've got some indications that works really well, especially in the advertising that we've just completed.
Why do Dude Wipes clean better?
Because they're extra large.
Because they're flushable.
Because obviously wet cleans better than dry.
With big plans to take over more of the toilet paper industry, Dude is doubling its marketing spend and pulling off even bigger stunts. For this year's Super Bowl, Dude bought multiple giant billboards overlooking the Las Vegas Strip, which it populated with potty jokes.
I told the dudes, look, you've got this major advantage. The other guys can't crap on toilet paper, okay? Because they sell that stuff. You don't. You can go after this. And the toilet paper market is about 7 or 8 times the size of the flushable wipes market. Now, we are growing dramatically, okay, but it will take a while. But just by comparing ourselves to that, we get ourselves in that mix, and that's a good place to be.
Dude still has some catching up to do to reach category leaders, but their wipes are now available in more than 20,000 stores across the US, with some big deals on the horizon.
Just because you didn't know how to do it doesn't mean you can't learn how to do it, and we're living proof of that. Guys with no experience, no capital, no investors have really been able to grow a company into a big disruptor of the toilet paper aisle nationwide.
Behind every great story of business success, there is one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had legendary investor Benjamin Graham. And Andrew Lau has Phil Braden and Dave Gurley. Dave first hired Andrew as an intern in 1999 when they were both working for a tech startup in Boston. Their professional paths diverged for a few years after that, but the trio remained in touch, and they were determined to find a way to work together again someday. Eventually, they joined forces to co-found Jellyfish. Jellyfish landed on the Forbes list of the next billion-dollar startups in 2023, and Andrew, once the intern of the group, is now the company's CEO. This journey would not have been possible, he says, with anyone other than Dave and Phil.
Andrew Lau, co-founder and CEO of Jellyfish. Thank you for being here.
Maggie, thanks for having us here.
Jellyfish was on the 2023 Forbes Next Billion-Dollar Startups list, but you didn't start your career there. And I have this thesis that everyone has in their career someone who changes the course of that journey. So we're here for the one who changed everything. Andrew, who was the person or were the people who changed everything for you?
Well, I have two. Dave and Phil are my co-founders of Jellyfish. These guys actually hired me back in 1999. So I go way back with these folks, like 25 years. And I got really lucky in that job and the chance to work with them. We wouldn't be here literally if it wasn't for these guys.
Let's talk about 1999. Do you remember interviewing with them? What was that first interaction?
Thanksgiving in 99, I went on a trip with some high school friends. I think I spent some college money, and the whole time back on the flight, I'm thinking, I gotta get a job, I gotta get a job. And the first mail I had in my inbox was from Dave. And Dave goes, like, we started this new company here in Boston. I already talked to your boss from last summer because he had worked there previously, so you should come check us out. This would have been maybe around early December of 99. I walked into this company, it was in this basement, there was like, I don't know, maybe 10 people down there. They were telling me all these things about the startup I should do, all the great things that's gonna happen, and I literally just needed a job. And they're trying to sell me like, we do this, we'll do this, and this is the future, and I'm like, does it pay? Does it have a job? And I said, sure. And so I started working with these folks in December of 99, and I was still in college. And so by spring, I was like, this is so much more fun and interesting, and I'm learning more than school. So I bailed on my grad degree and went full-time working with these folks that spring.
So they literally saved you money from a grad program.
Exactly. Yeah.
I say that about one of my early bosses. I say, he saved me $80,000 by telling me not to go to grad school.
Yeah, it gave me, I think, a little bit of clarity about like what I wanted to do. I think a lot of the time when for me, you're in college, you do grad school, you do it because you're supposed to. And this is one of those moments where I was like, I'm actually just having fun, learning more. Like, this is a thing that I'm gonna actively choose to go do.
What were you doing in that role?
I did early engineering with these folks, but I remember somewhere along that early journey, these guys actually just took me along to see different things that were close to what you might call sales engineering. And I got to see what it was like to get in front of customers and build things. And not just like building for code's sake, but also trying to make something work for other people. And I learned a lot just even in that interaction, just learning to be in there and like selling and being part of that journey, the entrepreneurial journey with folks that was more than just the coding.
I was gonna ask, it's a startup. So what did you learn from being in a startup during what is now referred to as the dot-com bubble?
I mean, I was really lucky, right? Like, because this company, I joined in, the December of 99, I saw the bubble really foment and I saw it like go the other way. And like, I learned the world's pretty volatile. All my friends that I graduated in 2000, they all got laid off that spring afterwards or right in that bubble. And we were lucky, right? Like, we were able to march it forward. But I learned a lot about you just, sprinting towards the next goal, being responsive to the opportunity. I think a lot of this is like instinctive, but like there's a vibe you learn that is hard for me to put words to, but there's a certain feeling and pace. And I often talk to folks starting their careers in the entrepreneurial side. You kind of learn the taste of winning, and I don't know what the taste or the sound. It's hard to pin it down, but you kind of figure out what the feeling is when things are happening and working right. And like that's, when that click happens and the business starts accelerating and you're delivering things and things start working, that's actually the fuel that drives the business forward and that energy of that startup growth. And you almost get hungry for that taste again. Like, what it tastes like, it's hard to describe.
That's so interesting. So it's success in entrepreneurship, you learned at Endeca, is a vibe, a feeling, almost more than any financial metric?
Well, it's success, I think, is the aftermath of it. So I don't even think it's definitely even before seeing any metric, it's I think it's a feeling, it's a vibe that you actually feel things are starting to work, right? So it might be the way that you're making product, it might be the way that you're selling, the way that you're connecting with a customer on a message or how they're using it. But either way, you learn that there's this instinctive energy that kind of comes before all those other metrics come into play, and you're actually hunting and seeking for that.
At the time, did you ever imagine you would 20 plus years in the future be running a different startup with them?
Probably not, but I would say in those years for me, it wasn't like I was thinking a lot out. You were just there doing it. And we were, like, that company was really lucky. Like, I joined at 8 people, it eventually grew to 550, and we were largely, in my mind, like doubling every year, the company and the team. And of course it wasn't that linear, but in my brain it felt like that. So I think when you're going through that, you're constantly learning. And so I'm just like absorbing the whole time and responding. I think that's to a certain degree, like what I wasn't thinking so far out, right? So definitely literally did not imagine working together 20 years out, but I think I was too immersed in it to be thinking that far out as well.
Now, Endeca has the exit with Oracle in 2010, 2011,
Yeah.
and you count 2017 as the founding date
Yeah.
for Jellyfish. What happened in the ensuing 6-7 years for you?
I did a number of startups. I did 3 different startups. I got to help build a venture incubator along the way. And I think each step along the way, I learned something else about, for myself, around how startups work, what things matter at different times, and they were all different. But like how kind of early marketing matters, how having a bigger vision actually matters in knowing after that initial hit, how important timing is when it comes to fundraising and corporate. Like these were all kind of micro lessons that I learned along the way. To me, it was actually in post-facto, it was actually a reference point. So I think Endeca was an incredible journey, a great story to kind of see it from early to outcome there. But then my experiences afterwards, I could kind of map it back. I was like, okay, like I got it to that point and this is what happened and it was the same or different, or I was like, oh, this is like the condition we saw in 2004, but in a different way. So the Endeca story actually gave me a reference point that I actually could checkpoint my own learnings along the way. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's building a process.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when you're starting up, I've seen this, right? You're doing it for the first time, and building something for the first time is not the same as building
Correct.
a process for success.
I was explaining some of this to a friend of mine, and he was joking. He's like, yes, second, third time founders, they're always very structured about this. And I think it's true. Like the first time you go about it, you're just like doing it. And sometimes it takes, sometimes it doesn't. But when you're on that second, third, fourth try, you're like, okay, taking lessons away around like reasons, and you're unpacking, well, why didn't that work? Okay. And was that thing under your control or not? And then you're kind of seeking the next one. Okay, how do I not fall into that trap again, the next one? And so seeing, I think actually the whole end-to-end story in Endeca actually actually gave just tons of reference points that I could build on top of it.
We're here for the one who changed everything.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm curious about is for folks watching who may feel like they have not found their Dave and Phil.
Yeah.
What would you tell them about looking for that person, identifying those people?
Like there's no formula, of course, but I think you got to be open and put yourself out there. I know that seems simple, but I think I was lucky. And I think you really can't control many things with luck, but you can raise the chances of it by just being out there and meeting more folks. But even more than just meeting folks, being genuine, intentional, and trying to build that relationship early. I think if you're forward on it and open to it, I think you have a higher chance of actually meeting folks. And look, it's not just social clicking. It's your values click, the way you work together, the way you kind of work through arguments. There's like a bunch of stuff that makes it work, but I think you won't know that until you invest the time to try.
All right, so Andrew, we were talking about Dave and Phil, and now we are joined by Phil Braden and Dave Burley. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking you a version of a question that I asked Andrew. You guys hired Andrew back in 1999. What made you want to hire him? What did you see in this young college student?
Cheap
Dave,
labor.
Dave, you got to take that one.
Yeah, I guess I can add a little more detail to that story. So Andrew mentioned that he had worked as an intern at a company prior to Endeca, and this was late '99. Web bubble was going crazy. Finding talent was very hard, And that prior company worked on a number of different things, but one of the things it built was a web search engine. So when I was sitting at the early Endeca office, I typed in MIT and the name of that company, and I found his resume.
What about you? Do you remember early Andrew stories?
Well, I remember meeting him. Dave found him, and then we started talking to him. You were definitely debating whether to go to grad school, so part of it was, I think he wanted to have an internship, but maybe was thinking just work for a few months and get some money in his pocket kind of thing. But I think for us, we wanted people that were in it for the long haul, and so there was a whole campaign to persuade him that grad school was not the answer.
Oh, so you waged a campaign. See, Andrew made it sound very natural. Like
we liked the guy, it wasn't
right?
transactional.
Like the best campaign. I didn't know
Right,
what was happening.
right. No, it was authentic. But
And I'll ask you a similar question to what I asked Andrew. At the time, did you ever imagine your professional journey with him would extend another 20 plus years and that you'd build a startup together?
I mean, I'll say that in the beginning, it's hard to imagine that because you're so young and you're just trying to figure stuff out. I think that by the end of our time at Endeca, I didn't plan on it, but I also wouldn't at all be surprised by it. Because I think, at least speaking for myself, when I left, I definitely wanted to repeat the experience. I definitely valued the people that I worked with, most of all these guys.
I think working with people, going to battle with people, going through the journey together is how you build the relationships. So I think, if you're just startup dating and co-founder dating, I think it's hard. But I think if you can, even if you join a company and work with them and work side by side with them, you'll find your people. And then the story will play out over time in that way. So I think that is an active way to do it.
And that's advice I give folks that talk to me at the company today of just like, you're interviewing your future co-founders if you really want to be on the journey yourself to start a company.
I think there's also a getting to know people personally. Like sometimes you think of, and maybe especially during pandemic and Zoom, you're thinking like, okay, this is my job and I know these people in 2 dimensions, but getting to know people personally and knowing when you have value overlap, building trust with each other, not just getting the shared vocabulary.
Now, I want to go back to the moment that you've all kind of referenced at different points over the conversation. Take me back to when you first envisioned Jellyfish. How did you all come back together? You had been living in different places. What was that meeting like?
I mean, I'll go first. We knew we wanted to work together, or we knew we wanted to try. We talked about a number of different ideas. This was one that we all came at from our own personal perspective. So sometimes you'll hear like founder market fit instead of product market fit as a thing, and this was a high founder market fit from us. I mean, these two can speak for themselves, but they've been on the receiving end of some of the kind of questions that Jellyfish answers for people through most of their career, and I'll speak from my own personal experience. Sometimes I'm in product, I'm a little bit more on the asking side, and even right prior to Jellyfish, I was consulting for a friend's company where they couldn't understand what was happening in engineering. And it was even a small company, and so they still had this need that we've seen at all different scale points and all different sizes and shapes of companies. So it felt like a very pressing problem that had been in the industry for decades, and it felt like we maybe had an angle to solve it in a way that other people haven't.
Let's dive into that problem. What was the problem and what does Jellyfish do in 30 seconds?
Dave, you want this one? Well, I actually was relating back to, I actually remember when we actually were doing this, and I think the genesis point of how we actually started Jellyfish part, you asked, which one of you guys is gonna do the engineering thing this time? And I think Dave and I kind of went like this, not me. In my head, I remember I think you're like, I don't want to do that. That job is hard. It's tough, right? I think one of us said that people are always yelling at you. And I think you had an aha. You're like, or I think you said it in a trite remark at the moment, or seemingly trite, but it was like, why hasn't anyone done this Salesforce thing for engineering? I don't know if exactly those are your words. And then we're like, yeah, why hasn't anybody actually done that? And I think that was the kernel. It was like a in passing comment, but that actually been the kernel of what became what we're actually doing. And so to your question, what Jellyfish does is we actually connect, the software engineering teams, the most expensive, most strategic part of our organization today, software at the world, with the business, right? And to a certain degree, these things have been operating separately for a very long time. And so we provide business visibility into the engineering team, what's stuck, what's actually working there, how to move it forward, just like we actually connect the engineering part to the business, understand the impact of what's actually going on there. And that helps companies actually excel because they're making smarter decisions in how they execute.
Interesting. So basically, you knew you wanted to work together, and you also knew that none of you wanted to run engineering in your new startup.
Because it was hard, and it was because there was no data. It was all trust me discussions, and we wanted to solve it, that this is the only part of an organization where trust me was the way that businesses were managed. And we saw how every other function in the business in the last 20 years, from sales to marketing to success, even HR now actually has tons of data that you can actually understand what's happening there. So it's not just a trust me exercise. It's actually like, hey, let's understand what's happening here. Let's optimize it. Let's invest in it, and let's drive it forward. And it was like this crazy world where software was the engine of all contemporary business, but yet it was the only part where no one understood and no one connected.
Why call it jellyfish? I should have started with that question, but where did the name come from?
Well, I guess two things. We talked about Endeca as the place where we all met, and at that company we learned how not to name a company, maybe, because we spent many months on it. We had a failed attempt where we picked a word that meant armpit in Latin and had to unwind that one. And so this time we're like, let's not do that again. Let's spend a few hours on it. I remember scheduling like a 2-hour meeting on Zoom, and we time boxed it, and we all brought a list of names. Andrew put jellyfish on the list. I didn't love it, or I wasn't getting it. And I remember asking you, why are you so into this name jellyfish? And Andrew's like, well, they're transparent and they're cool, and we're trying to bring transparency to engineering. And I'm like, all right, like that's a good, that works for me actually.
And it was like a placeholder name in the sense that we were like, hey, we spent 2 hours on it. Like, if we ever get, we'll get to some point, if we're successful, we actually can pay for someone to really do it right. Yeah. But then it stuck. I think our customers liked it, and it was just different sounding. It doesn't sound like a business thing. It makes cool kind of surf looking gear.
We knew we wanted something that was approachable, like easy to spell, like, it was past the point where you needed to optimize for like a word that no one ever heard before, that the .com was like freely available.
You mentioned the sushi restaurant. I want to go back to the origin of the idea, because in entrepreneurial spaces, you often hear that the best companies are solving a problem. And you all, it sounds like you sat down wanting to work together, and you kind of stumbled into the problem. Is that fair to say?
We considered a bunch of problems.
You considered
and
a bunch of
this was the
problems.
one that was the best fit.
And as you considered product market fit or founder market fit or founder product fit, all the fits, how did you figure out which role each of you would play? You probably knew your strengths, but how did you divvy up the work? And how do you continue to divvy up the work?
It's hard, but we solved it because we come from similar backgrounds. So the really positive part is we're pretty, in some ways, interchangeable. Like, if one of us can't make a meeting, one of us can sub in pretty seamlessly because we have a lot of overlapping skill sets. When we actually started, I think each of us had small dimensions and shifts in different ways that pulled us towards different vectors. I think Dave solved the technical stuff early on. Phil kind of pushed on the go-to-market side. I handled the corporate side of it out of practicality of actually having certain networks here. But I think in some ways, we are still very overlapping and can pitch in with each other on it.
Dave and Phil, how do you feel about the division of tasks and labor and leadership?
Well, I thought it was nice to get back together with these guys and to do it from, I live in DC, so part of this was Dave and Andrew were in Boston. Dave was back in Boston at that point. So the geographical part of it was a factor for sure. So I think that went into it, and I also think just our respective, what we like doing when we get up in the morning. Like I think like the Endeca story, I enjoyed quite a bit figuring out how to make Endeca work in the market, and so focusing on go-to-market here was definitely the thing that I wanted to do.
I had asked Andrew how to find the one who will change everything for you if you're someone who feels like they haven't met their Phil and Dave. But now, Dave and Phil, I want to ask you, what's your advice to people who want to be the one who changes a career for someone else?
Well, I think, Andrew has used the phrase like make your own luck in terms of, putting yourself out there to do these things. And I think whether you're searching for a co-founder or, just trying to help the next generation of people, like I think we talk about this a lot at Jellyfish, we go out of our way to be transparent with the company in terms of how board meetings work, how we approach different problems, because we were on the other end of that, experiencing that, and we knew how much it helped us. So I think when you do that, you're making your own luck in terms of helping enough people that eventually you'll find your next thing, or your next mentee, or your next co-founder.
Where do you think you all would be had you not met? Had Dave not hired Andrew? Had you not worked at Inteca?
That's interesting. Wow, I was a consultant before I worked at Inteca. Like, I don't know that I would have kept doing that. I think I would have ended up in tech, and I think I would have ended up in Boston.
I would have ended up in California, because as a California guy, I was not planning to stay here, and life worked out, right? So that I know that geographically would have changed.
Yeah, same. I would have been back in California, working at other startups there probably.
And you all never would have met. Thank you all so much for being here. I know you're super busy, and I appreciate all of your time.
Well, thank you so much for.
Yeah.